Hello. I got to mute.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. There's no closed meeting report, so is there any conflict of interest amongst council members here tonight? Seeing none, I'm going to declare on 12.1 myself on the police service board that I stepped aside, and we're going to appoint somebody to sit in my position. So I'm going to declare a conflict of interest there. And I'll be turning the meeting over to the deputy mayor, and the deputy mayor will handle that from there, and then I'll step back in after that. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, under adoption and published agenda, I do have a number of revisions or changes for council's consideration. Firstly, Councillor Verbeek has given notice of a motion, of two motions. So we're looking to add those two notices of motion as 15.1.2 and 15.1.3. She will present those motions at that point in the agenda. Secondly, we're looking for council to consider moving up report 8.3 and moving that up to our first delegation this evening at 6.1. 8.3 is Drainage Report 2020-04, adoption of the Section 77.3 Engineer's Letter of Opinion. We have Mr. Anthony Saracini here on behalf of the Ministry of Transportation. So if it's council's wish, we'd like to be able to move that delegation up as the first item. Thirdly, of course, that would move our EOK delegation at 6.1 to 6.2. Next item, Mr. Mayor, is we had a delegation request on Friday concerning the COVID-19 response matters item on the agenda, and that delegate is Mr. David Cassidy, president of Unifor 444. So we're proposing to add his delegation at 6.3 tonight. And lastly, Councillor Bondi has given a notice of motion. So we're looking to add that as 15.1.4 to the agenda this evening, and it'll be presented at that point in the agenda.
Thank you, Rob. Is there any problem with councillors with these the agenda? Everybody's in favor of it? Everybody's okay? Can I see show hands, please? Everybody's okay? Thank you. Thank you.
So so if we can have a mover and seconder for adoption of the published agenda as amended?
Yes, I need a mover, Councillor Bowman and Councillor Verbeek. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Everybody's okay? Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to do that. Get some on you.
Oh, okay. Just here's okay. No, just give me a second here. 5.1 on the agenda, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held May 4th be adopted as circulated.
Have a mover, please, on that. Deputy Mayor Meloche and Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
.2, that the minutes of the special council meeting of May 1st, 2019 be adopted as circulated. .
Need a mover, please, Councillor Bowman and Councillor, need a seconder, Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? Carried, thank you. And at this point here, we'll move right into our first presentation, our drainage.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this was formerly Drainage Report 8.3, adoption of Section 77.3, Engineer's Letter of Opinion for the Essex Outlet Drain. And this is together with Bylaw 1913 for Council's consideration this evening. Bylaw 1913 is to adopt and approve the engineer's letter of opinion. So this evening, we do have here Mr. Anthony Saracini, project engineer for the Ministry of Transportation. And he's here this evening in conjunction with this report and to answer any questions that council may have accordingly.
Thank you, Rob. And we'll go right to, first of all, thank you, Anthony, for coming into our meeting. I'm going to open it up for any discussion from council. Is there any questions from council on this? Sorry. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Malash.
Yes, to you, Mr. Saracini. Just wondering the time frame on this, on these drainage changes that will take place.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. To answer your question, the ministry is currently retaining a design build consultant to continue the detailed design and construction of the Highway 3 widening project, which this report is being adopted in conjunction with. The ministry is currently going through the procurement process, which should be completed in early October 2020. The ministry is going through the process of this adoption in an attempt to try to expedite this work to realign that Essex Outlet Drain, as we feel it is part of the critical path for the widening of Highway 3 project. So to answer your question, we are scheduled for construction start 2021, but we are looking for ways to try to expedite this if possible.
Okay, thank you. One further question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So when this construction's done, do you know at this point in time, is it going to be necessary to close Highway 3 and reroute traffic in order to do this? Or is it going to be something that's going to be like a boring underneath the highway?
For this type of work, it'll be open cut on the new alignment. We are shifting the Highway 3 alignment to install the new culvert in its recommended location. There will be temporary closures of Highway 3 as well for removal of the existing infrastructure in its current place, and potentially some municipal works in the area to replace the existing outlet at the Essex Outlet Drain.
Okay, and I would imagine you would not know at this point in time how long that would take, whether it would be 1 week or 5 weeks or...
We don't know at this point in time. It really is determined by the staging from our design build proponent and how they envision completing this work. And we're unfortunately not at that stage yet.
Okay, thank you very much. I understand that, you know, you're working with getting a consultant, so we can get those answers at a later point in time. Thank you.
Anybody else from council have any questions? Seeing none.
Councilor Vandermolen.
Oh, Councilor Vandermolen, you have a question?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, sir, you said that the construction will begin in 2021. Which quarter are you anticipating in 2021?
We're hoping to have construction starting as soon as possible. For the Highway 3 widening, we're looking April as start of construction season, but we do see potential opportunities to advance fill for the Victoria Avenue structures. But again, that is determined based on the recommended staging plan determined from the design build proponent, which we're currently hiring.
Thank you very much. That's all.
Anybody else from council? Thank you very much, Anthony, for coming into our meeting and answering the questions from council. Thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'd be looking to
Yeah,
receive and support and pass
yeah,
1913.
I need somebody to receive the report. Councillor Van Dolen and Councillor Verbeek. All in favor? Thank you. Once again, thank you, Anthony.
Thank you very much for having me.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 6.2 on the agenda this evening is a public presentation by Mr. Mark Danelon. Mark is the Director, Finance and Regulatory Affairs at ELK Energy, Inc. Mr. Danelon's here in conjunction with the 2019 financial statements of ELK Energy, together with the annual resolutions of the shareholder of ELK Energy, Inc., which we would be looking for council to support the signing of those resolutions.
Thank you, Rob. Just to inform council, this is a report, a financial report. So Mark, anytime you're ready, you can start.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank administration for inviting me here tonight to provide a general overview regarding some of the endeavors ELK is currently navigating, as well as some information regarding ELK Energy, the electricity sector, and some interesting facts. So again, my name is Mark Danelon, CFO and Director of Stakeholder Relations at ELK Energy, for those of you who I've not formally met. So if I may, Your Worship, and members of council, I'd like to take this opportunity to provide some general background information on ELK Energy, its accounting methodology, some interesting facts, some service quality indicators of ELK Energy this past year. So in January 2010, ELK Energy was incorporated pursuant to the Business Corporations Act and is a successor corporation of the Hydroelectric Commission of the town of Essex, the Corporation of the Town of Lakeshore, Essex Electric Commission, and the Kingsville Hydroelectric Commission. So initially, these three municipalities were shareholders of the corporation. Now in 2008, ELK shareholders entered into a share purchase agreement whereby the town of Essex became the company's sole shareholder. And this transaction was approved by the Ontario Energy Board. Now, ELK is one of the leanest and lowest cost LDCs by rates in the province, and we're proud of that. ELK continues to strive to provide electricity to our customers in a safe and an efficient manner, and also at a fair and reasonable cost. This has once again been reestablished through the August 2019 PEG report. And this PEG report ultimately is the Pacific Economics Group Research Report, which is a benchmarking that the OEB engaged and places LDCs into buckets or groups based on efficiencies. And ELK was placed in group 1 along with 5 other LDCs, and group 1 being the most efficient. So ELK is regulated by the Ontario Energy Board through submissions of quarterly and yearly reporting, as well as the review of our yearly tariff of rates and charges schedule. ELK's accounting procedures are currently in accordance with IFRS, which stands for International Financial Reporting Standards, as opposed to fund accounting, which municipalities generally operate under. Now, with respect to some of ELK's service quality indicators, it's important to note that all targets have exceeded OEB standards. Now, some of these involve connections connected within the required time, appointments being met on time, and emergency response times being achieved. So again, we're proud of these accomplishments, but never rest on our laurels and know that improvements can be made and greater efficiencies even achieved. Now, from a financial perspective, the auditors, KPMG, recently completed their 2019 audit and have issued a clean audit opinion. The audit opinion was that the consolidated financial statements presented fairly and in all material respects the financial position of our company. There were no misstatements identified during the audit. Now, within the audit findings report, that's an additional piece of information that the auditors provide. No control deficiencies were also reported and no further recommendations. So specifically speaking to our financial statements, ELK currently has a very strong balance sheet with assets over $28 million and liabilities around $10 million. ELK's cash position is very strong. This past year, ELK was also fortunate enough to repay an additional $500,000 in long-term debt. And the income statement was consistent with prior years, producing positive results of approximately $938,000 before taxes for ELK Energy and our shareholder. The board of directors at ELK, together with senior management, are proud of our results of another successful year and appreciate all of the hard work of our staff, team, and leadership led by our great CEO, Mike Audette. Now, looking into 2020, ELK is also projecting capital expenditures of approximately $1.5 million, with the majority of that money going directly into our infrastructure. Once again, ELK is planning and working hard to have another successful financial year. I also wanted to touch upon some of the significant projects ELK has recently completed this past year in the town of Essex. These include South Point, Townsview, Jacana, and we're currently ramping up for the Anderton development in Harrow. We also had successful projects of Weston's, Crawford Packaging, and a few other residential developments. ELK has been active in underground asset renewal in our service areas, which includes initiatives such as installing new duct, high voltage cable, as well as replacing existing transformers with new, more efficient new mini pad transformers. We're also replacing poles, so pole replacements are continuing. And 2 heavy duty trucks are currently being built. Unfortunately, they're stalled currently in Quebec due to the COVID pandemic, so delays have occurred. I'd also like to touch upon and provide a little bit of report on the ever-changing environment and electricity sector over the past few months. ELK has adopted an unofficial model of we are all in this together. Although there have been many challenges and changes, ELK is working hard as a team to continue to provide our essential service of electricity to our customers in a safe and reliable manner. So what have we done? We've suspended disconnections for non-payment for customers until July 31st of this year. As well as with all other LDCs, we're providing relief in the form of charging our customers off-peak rates of 10.1 cents beginning March 24th until May 31st. And these rates are going to be charged 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. ELK has also passed on a reduction of our distribution rates to our customers. And we're working with them on an individualized basis if they need payment arrangements. So we're trying to accommodate the customer as much as possible. I'd like to take also this opportunity to thank our customers for their support with ELK during these times, as they too have had to alter some of their regular routines and behaviors. We're truly in this and working together and have been very successful understanding the different challenges and changes that are occurring weekly and sometimes daily. We want our customers to know that we're here for them. So I'd like to take this opportunity in conclusion to thank you for your time. Hopefully that I've provided you with some information, some beneficial information that provides a clearer picture of ELK, but also of the changing environment that we're currently in and the electricity sector, which truly does at times change, sometimes faster than the speed of light. So thank you for your time, and hopefully that was an informative presentation.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to open it up to council to see if council has any questions for Mark. Please keep them, in the financial. Councillor Bjorkman. Councillor Bjorkman. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mark, thanks for that report. Some really good numbers there too. One of my questions is, as far as our long-term debt repayment, we were able to make a $500,000 repayment. What's our minimum? What's the minimal amount that we can repay? Did we go better than that, or where are we?
So each year there's analysis done and a recommendation made to the board essentially of what ELK is comfortable with in achieving. Over the past few years, we've been very successful in our cash flow management that we've been able to make these 500,000 repayments. In the beginning of the debt, ELK had made 800,000 repayment. So we're always looking based on what's before us, what can ELK sufficiently and comfortably, I guess, achieve in the repayment. That recommendation is then made to the board for ultimate discussion and approval.
And just follow up to that, Mr. Mayor. So what is the total debt that's owing on that long-term debt?
Currently, let me just take a peek. Currently, it's $3.1 million.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Verbeek. Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mark, for coming tonight. And I had a question. I'm really grateful that you're adhering to this "we're all in this together" motto and taking some action in that regard. Grateful for the cancellation of suspensions until the end of July. But my question with, there's, even though we are opening up, there's a lot of families staying home. We just heard that our students will not be going back to school. And in September, the university is going to be managing all of their courses online from, so we'll have a lot of students, even at the university level, still at home. Has there been any discussion on extending the time of use beyond May 31st?
So that is a directive directly from the Ministry of Energy. So all LDCs are mandated to follow that direction. So originally it was up until, I believe it was a 45-day window from March 24th. That then got extended until May 31st, which all LDCs apply. And we're currently waiting on further direction of kind of next steps for what LDCs can provide.
Okay. Anybody else from council? Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our delegation. Hi, Mark. Thank you for coming. Did I hear you say that you're now the Director of Stakeholder Relations?
Yes.
Can you please, through you to Mark, can you elaborate on what that, I believe that's a new title, and I'm kind of curious and excited to hear about this title. Can you elaborate on what that title encompasses now?
Yes. So what I am going to be trying to accomplish through that role is to try to make ELK Energy, I guess, better known, make it more an identifiable name, an identifiable brand for our customer base, for the community, for other LDCs. You know, one of the tasks that I'll be looking at kind of taking on is kind of getting our website into a more applicable, modern state, you know, more interactive for the customer. So that's kind of my main goal with that title.
And further, thank you very much. The PEG report that you referenced, now I get to wear the stakeholder hat. So is that, the PEG report, is that public knowledge? Is that something else that us stakeholders can read?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I still have a couple more questions. So we didn't really go through the audit, and I believe that's why you're here, is to present the audit, right? We all know you're doing a lot of new, wonderful development projects for us, and I'm happy to hear about the trucks, of course. But I really think that there's some questions that I have in the audit. One being the unbilled revenue. So there seems to be, and the reason why I feel that that's important is because of COVID. If we have a lot of unbilled revenue, does that put us in any risks, in a position of risk?
Not at all. What the unbilled revenue represents is usage prior to the end of the year that has not yet been billed into the future year. And that's all that is. It's a consistent number from year to year. The OEB has provided LDCs with instruction, however, which they're currently still trying to, I guess, create some support for LDCs as to potential lost revenues for LDCs regarding the COVID pandemic. But the item on the financial statement with respect to unbilled revenue is simply a timing issue.
Okay, thank you. And I still have on page 8 of the audit, there is the rate application. It's a basis of preparation, the rate application, and it goes through the cost of service application, which I believe was done in 2016. The last paragraph there says the corporation last filed a cost of service application in 2016 for rates effective November 1st, 2017 to April 30th, 2018. If the cost of service application is 5 years, why did that only cover about a year? And what is happening with the next cost of service? And are we on track for qualifying for that application?
So our cost of service is a 5-year period. That's determined by the Ontario Energy Board. It's over a year-long process. So our rates came into effect in 2017. Our next scheduled cost of service is actually in 2021. So it's a 5-year window between cost of service applications.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you. And I think, Mr. Mayor, my last question is to our CAO. I see this as, you know, a nice meet and greet. I like Mr. Danilon's new enhanced title. Is this something that a relationship where we can pursue going further, and just like, I feel like we touched the tip of the iceberg tonight in terms of our role as shareholders. I've gone through the asset management, the district system plan from front to end, but I don't really understand it. And I think it's important as shareholders that we understand it. I'm not even sure if everybody on the ELK Finance Committee has read it, and everybody on council. So I would like to open the door and invite our director of, I believe it's a director of stakeholders back. You know, if if we can't meet in person at some time, by Zoom again. So my question is to Mr. Nepsey, can we look at having further meetings with Elk Energy? And that's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, through your worship. Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Bonnie, for the question. I think that's something that both Mark and Mike and myself and team here, Rob and Jeff, have been having more discussions than in the past, I guess, than I guess has been regular, more so because we're new players, right? Myself, just over a year here, Jeff in his role as director for a few years, and Rob as well. So we've been asking a lot of questions that maybe Mark and Mike know the answers to, and with the new council, I think the simple answer is absolutely. That's something that I would like to continue this. I look at today as a real nice opportunity to open that door and those lines of communications and look to expand on that, have that information and almost that orientation meeting with council for what's a stakeholder, what's the difference between that and a board member, how can they operate, what questions can be asked, why are things closed meetings, the energy department, I guess, Elk Energy operates much differently than the town of Essex, with some similarities. So to expand on those and explore those, I think is an excellent opportunity for council to become better educated, so they'll become a better council and therefore a better board member. So yes, looking forward to continuing this with Mark and enhancing the knowledge base for council and staff.
Councillor Vanendon, you had a question? Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Danlin. First of all, thanks very much for the report, Mr. Danlin. You mentioned that the suspension of the time of use pricing currently goes to May 31st. Do you anticipate that they might extend that? I mean, we know that this current government ran against time of use and wants to get rid of it. What do you think?
That's a good question. I know there's a lot of a lot of discussions happening in the background. What they're currently doing is seems to be extending the time of use relief based on the emergency timelines that have been extended. As far as anything with time of use changes, we haven't heard anything as of yet.
Have you seen, gotten any feedback or seen any actual help that the suspension of that time of use provided? Did anyone say thanks, or was it unnoticed?
It really depends on the individual. There's a lot of customers that are on pre-authorized payment that may not notice the change. I think what they kind of valued is about a $20 to $30 savings, potentially based on usage. So we have had some customers have been very grateful in the relief provided, and some customers, they're not even aware of it. But I think with all the pieces that the LDCs as well as the government has offered, in total, have been very positive for the customer. Special payment arrangements, the no disconnect. So in conjunction, I think the support that LDC sectors have been able to provide the customer has been tremendous.
I agree with what.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I agree with what you're saying there, Mark. I'll guarantee a lot of customers don't even know about the savings. So, anybody else from council have a question? Councillor Bowman, go ahead.
Yes, to Mark, just a question with this sort of waiving the time of use criteria for the billing. There's obviously a considerable cost to that to the Elk Energy. Is there any discussion on who's going to be able to pick up the additional cost there? Is it going to be totally borne by Elk, or is there going to be some funding coming forward?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Currently, the OEB, Ontario Energy Board, has made some regulatory accounts available where LDCs are to track the amount of cost associated with this pandemic. as almost like a holding account currently. The details of what is going to be allowed to be, I guess, held by ELK versus compensated back to LDCs is still to be determined. But currently there are regulatory accounts that have been newly set up that are going to be tracking, administration time, lost revenues, at least as a holding account currently. And our association, the EDA, is also assisting us with this process.
Because obviously we got to pay for the hydro we purchased to distribute. So there's going to be a cost to us in some respect, and hopefully they'll come up with some system to reimburse the supplier of the hydro to our customers. So
I
wait
agree.
and see.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Melange, you had a question? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, it's an interference on my screen here. Mark, thank you for bringing up the point about the charges being brought in by the province, determined by the province whether we charge by time of day and so on. I know when it first came out, Ontario Hydro announced immediately themselves that they were going to be dropping their rate and not going with that. But I think they jumped in a little bit earlier than everybody else to say that they were going to drop their rates and they weren't going to charge by time of day. Although they're the big player in the whole out of all the LDCs. Maybe they had inside information that it was going to happen, or took a chance that it was going to happen, or something to that effect. But it was good that we were able to announce that we were doing the same thing, obviously, for our customers as well. And it's good that you pointed out the fact that even Ontario Hydro has to abide by that rule that the province dictates whether those rates are changed or not. It's not the individual LDCs. So Ontario Hydro did not really put that program in place before ELK. They announced it before us, but they announced early as far as I'm concerned. We weren't able to announce as ELK because the province hadn't given us that direction yet. And I think that you probably agree with that.
Yes, absolutely.
Councillor Bondi mentioned having another meeting, maybe a learning session. And I full-heartedly agree that that would be a good session. The asset management plan is a really interesting document, and it's something that's not easily absorbed. So it may be worthwhile, and Sherry's laughing right now because she knows what I'm talking about. Take some studying, and it's something that might be a good idea for Mark, if you could maybe one evening just teach us what that asset management plan is all about. And it's one of the more important documents that go into determining if the OEB is going to give us an increase in our rates, or if determining whether we need an increase in our rates. And it might be a good idea for us to have an evening where Mark can maybe just bring us through the whole document, and we can maybe get the document ahead of time. Well, actually, we can have it right now. Anybody can read through it, but look through it and then maybe pose some questions. Mark, you can highlight some of the things that you would look at as being the director of finance in the whole group of responsibilities that you have. So Mark, I just want to say thank you for coming out tonight and going over this. I didn't have a lot of questions for you because you and I have talked about the financial statements in advance. I've had a couple of opportunities to see it and be able to ask you questions. So thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mark, thanks for coming tonight on and discussing everything with us. The financials look good. I have a few questions. I'm not sure if this is the forum for it or not. it revolves around the value of the asset to the town, the dividends and payouts. How does that work? And when was the last time a dividend was paid out?
So that's a directive that ELK would essentially take from the board of directors with respect to dividend payout. And I believe the last dividend payout was in the year of acquisition of 2008.
Councillor Garen?
And then value of ELK, how would that work? Who would be able to answer that?
So, yeah, again, I think, you know, that's a question that could start maybe with the board. There's various ways of valuing an entity based on accounting standards. So I think there would have to be some direction, again, from the board. You know, based on the results of ELK, it's a strong company. Just looking at the history of the financial statements, you know, there's different methods of valuing a company through multiples of net income, for example, or looking at the assets and liabilities. You know, accounting firms usually do valuations, for example. But I think that directive would come from the board.
Good. Go ahead, Councillor, you had another question?
You know, just further that, I guess where my concern as a counselor is in knowing we purchased this way back. Is it what everything we thought it was going to be? Is it an asset which is worth keeping? These are things that I think we're going to have to learn as we go on. But as far as the financials and what you presented tonight, it all looks great. I'm just looking for a little more insight on that part of it, and hopefully we get it.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Malash, you had a question. Deputy Mayor Malash. We lost you.
Sorry, again. I just wanted to add one comment to what Councillor Garen was asking about. Back in 2008, when we bought the asset, it was decided that at that time the town of Essex would forego their dividend in order to pay down the loan that we had taken out to purchase the loan that maybe not explaining this right. There's a loan that's associated with the amount of money that it cost us to purchase, like a bonus amount of money. It cost us to purchase the assets of ELK from Kingsville and from Lakeshore, because another company had stepped in and bid it up. But we had first right of refusal at whatever price was the highest price, the town of Essex as being a partner in the company. So we decided that we were going to move forward and purchase the company. But at that point in time, we allowed that debt to remain with ELK is what I believe happened. Mark, I don't know if you can confirm that.
Oh, that's exactly right, Richard.
Right. So what we've done is now we've decided to forego our dividend for the time being. So when we make these large dollar sum pay downs on the loan that we have, that ELK has, at some point in time, that loan is going to disappear. And then that's when you're going to see the dividends. Instead of making large chunks of loan payment, you're going to see ELK be able to give dividends back to the town of Essex. And it'll be a little while before that happens, but it will happen. And ELK, just by the nature of the business, LDCs, they have a certain amount of profit. And I think that we'd be well, that's for another time to discuss, but that's what's going on with dividends. Right now, we've foregone our dividend so that we can pay down that loan quicker. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are our CEO would like to say a few words here. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I think along the lines that Deputy Mayor Malash answered that very eloquently. But basically was, yes, the purchase was made, the loan was taken out, the dividends would pay off that loan. And then at some point in the future, I think the discussion of, let the town live with the dividends for a while. Elk's a successful company, it's doing well. Let's see what happens. And then we can decide what the future is of that. But until that, the thought was basically get the loan paid off and then we'll see where we're at. And we're a few years away from that, moving in the right direction. But it's not a bad thing necessarily, as Councillor Darren noted, to have those discussions, at least to start brewing them and talking where we're at. I think in discussions with Mark today and from what I'm hearing from council, it's something I know that I've pushed since I've started in terms of understanding and getting more involved with Elk. The previous CAOs were the major players here and trying to make sure that we have those meetings and council understands their role as both stakeholder and board member is something that I'm pushing. And I think with Mark and especially with his new title, I think we'll get there. So I'm looking forward to after tonight, I think it was a great start on opening those lines of communication and continuing that and moving in the right way. So thanks again, Mark, for coming out. I appreciate it.
Good. Once again, thank you, Mark. Any other questions from council? Okay, I need a motion to receive the report, please. And authorize the resolution, please. I need a motion. Councillor Darren and Councillor Vanendel. All in favor? Carried. Once again, thanks, Mark.
Thank you for having me, everyone.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our third delegation this evening that was added as 6.3 to the agenda. We have Mr. David Cassidy here. Mr. Cassidy, of course, is the president of Unifor Local 444, and he's here to speak tonight concerning COVID-19.
Dave, where are you?
Thank you. You hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you. We can hear you fine.
Thanks. First off, I'm here as a resident of the town of Essex and a business owner. I just wanted to clear that up. Maybe my signature on my email, Rob, was president there, but I'm here as a business owner of the town of Essex and a resident of the town, but more importantly, a business owner around it was. And when I saw the agenda originally about around 8.1 on the COVID-19, I felt it was needed to bring the issue forward to council as to what's transpiring around the whole COVID issue that everybody's dealing with. So first off, I just want to thank the town, Chris and Doug, when I first met with you, the issue around with the Unemployed Help Center and partnering with the town and I mean with our local union to actually get the word out for the hamper project. There's approximately 200 cars that went through between Essex and Harrow, and it was well received. And I just want to thank you for that. And Sherry and Kim, I know you were out there all day with us, handing them out. It was nice, and I got some nice messages back from council. So if it's needed again, please make sure that we continue to do this. There's that opportunities there. And I think that if it's needed, we should continue it in Essex and Harrow. It was well received. A little bit more was in Harrow than happened in Essex, and maybe we can push it out a little harder, Chris, next time, or communicate a little better. I mean, I think we did a pretty good job, and I just don't. I just want to first give kudos to you, to everybody for the town for helping out with that process. I wish, like with today, I mean, obviously the province enters into the first stage of the framework for reopening the province. And part of that initial stage is permitting the reopening of some outdoor recreational amenities, including the sports facilities, multi-use fields, off-leash dog parks, outdoor picnic sites, and everybody's read it, and that started today. I see the dog park is opened up in Essex here, and I just there's becoming a big problem. Obviously, you all understand about the businesses, and you know, that's in town that are struggling. Some businesses, my wife's and my business, new business, not quite. We just celebrated on Cinco de Mayo 1 year being operational. But a lot of the initiatives that the government was putting towards business to help people, whether it was the CERB program, the wage subsidy, the one around the businesses for the small businesses was the Canada Emergency Business Account. And that was a actual $40,000 loan through your, whether it's a credit union or a bank. But one of the stipulations on that, you had to have a $20,000 to $1.5 million payroll that qualified you for that. And as a new business owner, that was not, we didn't know, there isn't too many small businesses potentially that fit in that. A new business starting out doesn't have an opportunity to pay people. They're trying to make ends meet as they move forward. And then, you know, you get shut down because of COVID, and hopefully shortly it moves back up. I have been talking to South Shore Fitness, the Clees that are out there in Harrow, and they have the same issue relative to what our facilities are. A couple of the questions that I have is, the first one is the municipalities. I don't see many letters going to the province, because if they're relative to a municipality pushing the province as to lobbying for things around businesses in the municipalities. I asked a couple of the councillors if any correspondence went forward relative to that, and to my knowledge, nothing has gone forward to the province looking for what assistance could happen relative to the businesses in the town. The second question, is there any opportunities, or has the council looked at any opportunities on tax breaks for the small businesses in the municipality and helping them out? I wish that I had a financial statement like the ELK just presented, but unfortunately, that's not happening, and a lot of businesses will be struggling. Chris, I did have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit at the hamper handout and what that could look like for a lot of the businesses in the town. Are people even going to open back up? When are people going to be open back up? And the last question that I have is relative to, because of they're permitting opening of some outdoor facilities, recreational facilities, etc. Is the town prepared that I would be able to run the boot camps style outside of our facility until that day comes that you can open up inside the facility? I know that people go into, they can go to the ballpark now, and as long as you don't have groups over 5, they could be out there playing. They could be skateboarding in the parking lot, people in the dog park. Will we be able to run outdoor, social distance, taking the proper precautions to run outside of our facility? So those are some of the questions. So is the town looking at lobbying on behalf of the businesses? Is the town looking at any potential of tax breaks to the businesses? And also specifically to mine, are we able to run boot camps and social distance outside of our facility?
Thank you, Dave. We can answer some of these questions for Dave.
You have a question. Councilor Verbeek, you want to go first?
Councilor Verbeek, do you have a question?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions and a couple of comments. As far as the town lobbying the province, I would definitely hope that we can do that in any way possible for our business owners. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Cassidy, I just wanted to say that a little later in the meeting tonight, one of my notice of motions is to ask for council to have discussions on assisting businesses with outside operations and such. And so I certainly welcome any comments or input you can give us before we follow up in 2 weeks with an open discussion, provided my notice of motion passes later. And so maybe you could, but I also wanted to say, I'm not a gym user, haven't been for a great number of years, but I hear from a lot of my friends, they count on their time with their gym community for mental health reasons, as well as physical. I have several friends that find that to be one of the hardest parts of this shutdown period, is their inability to attend their time at the gym. So by all means, I hope we can look at ways to perhaps, like you say, accommodate parking lot boot camps or such. Anyway, yeah, thank you for coming. And if you have any input that would help us, if we are able to do follow-up, if my notice of motion passes later, it will cover a lot of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree. I agree with what Dave is saying. I can't see why the province wouldn't allow that. I don't think the town would ever stop that, but I mean, if you got the distance apart, I can't see a problem with that, Dave, to be honest with you, but it'll be up to probably, I'm not, what do you think, Chris? Will it be up to the Ford government, or if they're allowing people back into parks and to marinas and that, I can't see how this could affect anything. I can't see why we wouldn't allow this to happen.
So if I can, then through your worship, I'm going to let Doug take over for a bit, but I think I'm just going to jump on a couple of the other questions that Mr. Cassidy had. Thanks again, Dave, for organizing last weekend. I think it was well received. It was great to see both in Essex and Harrow Center, and yeah, if we're here happy to partner. If you need assistance again that way, we're more than happy to help. So your question one was, municipalities of the province. I think Councillor Verbeek noted that would be something I would look to council for direction on if they want to, like anything, press the province or issue letters. That definitely comes as direction from council. Opportunities for tax breaks was your second question. It's something that hasn't been discussed. I think we've just been kind of getting through to this point. We've deferred taxes. So in terms of relief on taxes, that's a whole different ballpark. So that's something that we can continue having discussions on, and we can look to council to steer us that way. With respect to, yes, we're opening, rec centers, or not rec centers, sorry, we're opening, marinas open, the dog parks, whatnot are open. With respect, I know we had a discussion Saturday on this, Dave, running your facility outdoors only. I would have to, talk to our neighbors and potentially get some legal on that. My understanding is your facility is closed under the provincial guidelines right now, and allowing them to open outdoors, I'm not sure what the implications are of that. And also, we have to be sensitive to, there are several gyms within our municipality, and not necessarily all of them adjacent to town property or town facility that way. So I gave you that same answer on Saturday. I think it's something that we would have to explore before we got into. I know, I guess, like you said, what's the difference if four people got together in the park and did yoga together? Our parks aren't open for competitive sports right now. They are open, for different things. And this is where I'm going to have Doug chime in with respect to the details on that. So I think it's something that we can explore. I don't think it's an easy answer because the province doesn't necessarily give us clear-cut goals and objectives, but we can look into that, on council's direction. But Doug, can you supplement and add to, what I've added already?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. CEO is correct on his information. And one thing the province hasn't restricted about for park usage, they made a general comment about outdoor sport fields, but they define what you can do in those sport fields, and it's very limited. Parks in general are still just for walkthrough and not for recreational or fitness type activities. So I do sympathize for Mr. Cassidy or other fitness clubs, but currently right now the province hasn't lifted that restriction on outdoor recreation or indoor recreation.
Thank you, Doug. Councillor Yardman.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cassidy, thank you very much for bringing this forward, and again, for the work that your team and our staff did on the weekend. I think it's really important that we chase down ways to help these small businesses run their business. I know how much difficulty I'm having with a business. I know a lot of my fellow small business owners that are doing the same thing, and we're trying to find any way that we can generate income in order to pay those taxes, pay the fees, pay our insurance. There are things that are just not going away for small business. So I couldn't agree more with what Mr. Cassidy is trying to do. If what we need to do is send those letters, get our MPs and our MPPs working towards how can we benefit these small businesses. We've got parks that are open. We've got open areas. They can spread out, they can do the work. And if we decide, okay, one of our parks is going to be available to gyms on a rotating basis, a certain area where they can all have access to it. To me, we want people outside. We want people exercising. We want people doing these things, and they need it. A lot of them, it's mental health. This is so important for a lot of people. So I think if we need to find a way to engage our political reps and find a way to get these areas open. I just think it's so important to these groups in order for them to survive this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vanendome. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm all in favor of opening things up. I'm one of those people who think this has probably been a historic overreaction, especially in our region. Maybe not in other communities or in Quebec or Vancouver, but here certainly seems to be an overreaction, and I don't understand why we're still locked down so tightly. But the fact is, I don't think this is a political discussion, and it's not a political decision. It's supposedly a scientific one, and it's absolutely a medical one. And people can't have escaped noticing that there's a big divide in who wants to reopen and who wants to stay closed. And it's generally the private sector and entrepreneurs and private businesses that want to reopen. And it's the public sector, who are generally all fully paid, who want to keep the lockdown going. And if you want to lobby, I suggest you start lobbying your neighbors who are nurses and doctors and PSWs, because it's kind of a bottom-up opinion of the entire medical industry that this lockdown has to continue. And I think if you want to you can put all the pressure you want from our side on the premier, but he's getting the pressure from the medical side, and he's deferring to them. So we have to change the idea or the opinions of our fellow medical residents, I think, before the premier is going to put his neck on the line and say, okay, everything can open, you're all okay. He's not going to have it on his head if there are additional deaths. And it's the medical industry demanding that the lockdown continue. So as for the tax breaks, Mr. Cassidy and I rarely agree on anything, but I have always agreed that taxes are too high at all levels, everywhere, all the time. And but rather than hand out boutique tax breaks, especially to the private sector, because as a residential taxpayer, I'm worried right away that I'm going to have to make up that difference, which I'm opposed to, and I'm sure most residents are. But if we could somehow reduce the tax burden on our business class, I think that would be terrific. But not just one time. We should look at lowering it anyway. That's where all our revenue comes from. That's where all our jobs come from. You know, we should, if there's any, if this lockdown has proven anything, it's the value of the private sector to our society. Without a private sector, there is no society. We have nothing. We're all just trapped in our houses. So I'd like to do anything we can to help the business sector and the private sector get through this crushing economic blow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of good comments so far. I think so. My understanding is we're in phase 1. Phase 2 is going to be, I don't know, daycares. They're not opening schools, but they're possibly allowing camps in the summer. So I think some of these businesses, like I've been on the phone today too, talking to other small businesses. There are other small businesses in our municipality that would like to operate and they can't. Photography is one, right? Where people can take pictures in a park. They're socially distancing. It's safe. These home businesses are not allowed to operate. But if you own a photography store in a strip mall, you can open your door. So I think we need more clarification. I do agree with Councillor Vanderdolen that we may not be able to change the Premier's mind, but I think maybe we can operate under the umbrella of phase 1, asking for more clarification on how some of these forgotten businesses can operate in phase 1. For example, gyms, can we run outside or can they run outside boot camps? Can gyms open to a few people by appointment, right? Like we're having, I understand that we have to protect our vulnerable in this, but we are having like, you know, everybody's talking about this COVID-15 and I got it too, right? Like they're inactive. We're gaining weight as a society in general. So we need to get back. We need to allow people to start moving. So when the time is right, I would like to send a letter to the provincial government asking the Premier for asking permission for small businesses to operate outdoors when doing so safely. And if we want to fix that motion, we can. But I think that's at the very least we have to get the ball rolling to let the Premier know that we want to support our small businesses here. And then in terms of the tax breaks, I do think that we are hearing about that, and that I think would be, we allow our administration to get prepared for that. And that's a whole other conversation that we have at some point when we get a more information on what that looks like. So when the time is right, I'd like to make a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from council? Councillor Garron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thanks, Dave, for bringing all this to our attention. With respect, I guess, to the financial burden that's being put on our community businesses, I know in the past on our agendas, we've supported or at least received other municipalities' requests to higher tiers for the possible drop down of funds to municipalities to help with this situation with COVID. To perhaps Director of Corporate Services or Treasurer, Jeff Morrison, do you have any insight on that? Is it just rumblings at this point, nothing concrete? And do you feel that there is a possibility that municipalities may get some type of funding to help the community and the businesses?
Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
Chair, I haven't heard anything. There's been conversation from the lower tier level elves, but I haven't heard anything from our level of government as it pertains to relief.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Garron?
Yeah, so just further that, I would support, I think all the councillors here are pretty much on the same page with respect to the financial crisis that's being put on our businesses. With respect to the gyms, or in Dave's case and Jen's case, they have a unique business. I think it may be, like Councillor Bondi said, a forgotten business. There are some of these businesses that are I think being, it's not a black and white situation where they fall maybe under a different means where they possibly could still social distance and do some or all parts of the businesses. So I'd definitely be in support of, as soon as possible, reaching out to the Premier and seeing if we can start to get, right now, I don't even know if Dave and Jen even have any clarity as to when this stage for them might happen. I'm reading some stuff that could be like one of the last stages. So we definitely don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that we can get them up and running sooner than later. So I agree with supporting a letter as soon as we can.
Thank you, Counselor. Anybody else? Counselor Bondi, you want to state your motion, please?
Your mayor?
Go ahead.
Am I allowed, like, I don't know your procedure. Can I just comment on Doug's point?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
So on Doug's point, so obviously I've done a lot of lobbying myself. I talked to IRIC, I talked to Chris Lewis, I talked to Brian at the federal level and all of our provincial as well, all the time. Majority of the time I'm speaking on behalf of the members that I represent. But I do once in a while have something personal, and this one has been personal. I have looked at, you know, every single program there is. I looked at things for the town relative to wage subsidies. Is there anything that a town can get deferred to? Jeff said it right. There's not really any program for municipalities at this point to receive from the province, be it through a wage subsidy or any type of tax, any type of download to the municipalities. However, to Doug's point, I asked very specific questions, and I'd like a follow-up if you could, Doug, on the fact of reopening the outdoor sports facilities. As they open up today, I can go out there, as Chris mentioned, and do yoga myself. We can do yoga ourselves. We can go out there and we can gather and we can do X, Y, and Z. But because I have my business, I can have driveway beers if there's 5 of us. But for people's health and well-being, it seems to be a gray area. I don't know if there's really gray around there, if we are out there running around in a run group or if we're out running around and doing boot camps. I'm not sure if it does not specify at all on that. And I think that's something that really, I mean, that's the issue here that I'm talking about. You know, Chris, I know we had many discussion on it, but it's a big issue. And Chris Vanderdolen, we do agree on one thing. 2012, you got me elected. Thanks. If you forget, I'll send you the article.
Yeah, Doug, did you want to respond to this?
For you, Mr. Mayor, just quickly, don't disagree with Dave and wants to get going. All I'm going to do is always provide to council information we receive from the province. Every day I get daily reports from the province, and in outdoor sport fields, they set specific criteria. There's a lot around elite sports and individual training. And I can forward that out to council. I'll forward that to Mr. Cassidy as well. But that's all I will continue to do is forward information we receive from the province.
Thank you. Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a quick question for Doug and then you know, a statement. Doug, am I to understand that as of today, 4 people can go out and have a mixed game of tennis on our courts as they choose? And also, if that was indeed a motion by Councillor Bondi and seconded by Councillor Guerin, I am definitely all in favor of, you know, some issue letters to the province to support our small businesses. In all honesty, my motion later on tonight was to hope to kickstart this conversation and get some letters to the province in ways that, after looking at ways we can support all our small businesses and helping them operate outdoors. And so I too would be supporting that if indeed that's been first and seconded. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug, you go ahead.
Yes, Mayor, Councillor Verbeek's question. Yes, people can play tennis, and this goes to kind of the conversation council's having tonight. You can go and play singles, but they do not want you to play doubles. So again, it's that confusion, right? They're trying to provide social distancing for individual sports. And that's what they say singles are all right. They don't encourage doubles.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Any other questions? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That, you know, if you're playing singles from 2 different households, one on each side, but if you're playing doubles with, say, a husband and wife on one side and a husband and wife on one side, I don't see what the difference is. But anyways, maybe to our chair of our police service board or to our CAO again, if in theory, Jen went out there and taught a course, what's going to happen? Is bylaw going out there? Is the police going out there? Because I don't believe our police are giving tickets. So if you could play tennis and you can't work out, that's my question before my notice of motion, please. Who's going to fine them?
Well, we do have a bylaw officer that's authorized to fine him, and we do have the police to fine him too, but I do not believe that the police are really enforcing it. I know just through experience, through some of my friends that's been out in the boat, the police have come up to their boats. I know that that's been happening on the lake, but as far as land, I can't answer that, Councillor, but our CEO will answer a few questions here.
Yeah, through your worship, thank you. I've had many discussions with our staff sergeants and our OPP, along with our bylaw enforcement, and absolutely education is number one. So nobody's looking to slap fines on people. The first discussion is always, what are we doing here? Why are you here? So, to go into this with the, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to let you know I'm going to do this, come and stop me if you want to. It's not really the relationship we want to have with our residents and our business owners. I think it's something that we need to get clarification on that, make sure that we're all proceeding in that partnership, and we want these small businesses to operate as well. And as Doug noted, we're just following the directions of the province right now. As muddy as they are at some point, we're trying to err on the side of caution with those. So it's really to protect our residents, protect Dave and his members as well. So I don't want to really get into this situation where, hey, what are you going to do if I do this? I think it's a matter of making sure that we understand and are educated on and get clarification from the province on that before we put ourselves in that situation. So I know it's not really the answer that you're looking for, but I think it would garner, different discussion at the end of the day.
And if I can just say, it is the instructions coming down from senior government. If we could open up every business today, we would, believe me. And we're all behind the businesses 100%. We want to see every business open. And I hate to say, but a lot of the residents really don't get that. They blame us. They blame us because there's different activities that people can do. Like on Saturday, just give you an example, I got called everything a human being could be called down at the harbor. I was to blame of the harbor being closed. I was to blame. Council was to blame. We got called everything a human could have been called by this individual down there with our staff standing there. And I tried to explain to this gentleman, listen, it's not us. We would have loved to see this harbor open a long time ago, but it's the province that closed it. It's not us. And the public's got to understand that. But I agree with Mr. Cassidy. Okay, I agree with what he's saying about outside boot camp. I agree with that. I mean, I like to see that happen, but that if we can lobby, you're going to make a motion, Councillor Bondi, to send a letter. Hopefully that letter gets there tomorrow. We would love to see, honestly, businesses open. I'd love to see Dave's business open. It's a hardship. I know Councillor Bjorkman, he's got a business. We're all struggling, all the businesses, and we want to see them open, and we do. And Dave, we will send that letter out, and I will pressure Chris Lewis too, Dave, if I can, to maybe bring some ears in government to get things open again. A matter of fact, I'll try to get a hold of him tomorrow and put a bug in his ear and see what I can do, Dave. But council's behind you 100%, Dave. I'll tell you that right now. So anytime you want to make that motion, Councillor, you can make it.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That council send a letter to the provincial government asking for permission to allow small businesses such as boot camps who operate outdoors to do so safely with 5 people in social distancing. If anybody wants to change it, please do so. I'm just trying to throw something out there.
I would like, if you would, Counselor, I'd like to add to a letter sent directly to Chris Lewis's office.
Sure. And Taras, Natashak too?
Yes, absolutely.
I don't think Lewis has anything to do with it though, does he, your mayor?
No, but he can pressure, the province. He can help. Believe me.
Yeah, okay. Well,
So
I talked to him yesterday, so good luck. He's well aware.
Okay, we have a motion. I need a seconder. Was it Councillor Guerin? You second that? Any questions on that motion? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. And I need a motion to receive the report. Councillor Bjorkman? Go
Can you
ahead.
tell me what that means?
Go ahead, Councillor.
I'd like to make an additional motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd also like to make a motion because I understand what Mr. Cassie's talking about with not qualifying for the grants, the $40,000 loan with the attached grant because you don't have enough hours in that you've paid people. So I would also like to request the province create a support program to businesses that don't qualify for that $40,000 loan because they don't meet that payroll number.
That's your motion, Councillor, and got a seconder, Councillor Verbeek. Any questions on this one? You have no question? All in favor? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Dave, for coming out.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Okay, get the fuck out of here. I'm off here.
That was classy.
Let's move on.
How do I get the hell out of here?
8.1 on the agenda.
Hey, Dave. Dave, mute your mic.
Hello? Yeah, I'm trying to get out of here. I'm just going to close my computer down. Thanks. I'm not very techy.
Oh, yeah. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
8.1 on this evening's agenda is the CAO's verbal report on COVID-19.
Go ahead, Chris.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. So a few things I want to touch on. I mean, we talked quite a bit about outdoor rec, so I won't get into that too much. However, the big thing, we opened the harbor or the marina on Saturday, May 16th. Doug and his team well prepared in advance to be able to do so upon really not much more than a day or two notice to be able to do that. So we had about 60 boaters on our first day. The system worked well. We had one on the ramp. We had one on the lower level in line. We had staff at the top of the hill where our gates are, coordinating and notifying each boater of the process. I was out there Saturday morning and I witnessed how well the staff was prepared, educated, how they spoke with residents and boaters, and it really went off well that way. We had directional arrows on stairs to maintain the boaters going up and down from the ramp on a different set of stairs. So it worked well. So Sunday and Monday, the weather was not great, as we all know, which wasn't a bad thing for the busyness of the harbor. It allowed us to kind of get a soft launch, pun intended there, to get things going. So all in all, really well. The one thing I want to, I guess, look for direction from council tonight is that we prorate the seasonal slip season from May 1st to June 1st. So in essence, reducing from 23 weeks to 19 weeks, similar to what our municipal counterparts are doing. It was something I'd look for direction from council if someone can make a motion to that later. It makes sense. It's practical. It's one of those things you're talking about that something we can do to assist. And again, it just makes sense at this level. So it's something we can do after this. The other thing, so today the province lifted restrictions to allow us to open dog parks, tennis courts, as Doug noted, pavilions and benches. So staff is out removing signs from our benches. And we await direction from, you know, the upper levels of government on anything moving forward. With respect to staffing, so we still have 6 staff on voluntary layoff, which will end May 29th. It's something we discuss constantly or daily, how that staffing, how we're impacted by the people that are on layoff, how we're impacted by potential non-openings of our facilities, you know, later in the year. So as things stay closed longer, the impacts to staffing levels are greater. Like I said, Doug and I and Brandy and all directors are in discussion on what those impacts are. So right now we're operating well. You know, the staff complement we have is functioning great. We're getting things done at a reduced level of service. So all in all, things are good with respect to staffing. Building and construction is open again today. I mean, the facilities are closed, but the permitting process and what people can get permits for is green lights for everything. So that's great news for builders to be able to, you know, get house permits, you know, fence permits, pool permits, all those other permits that you can think of. So that's great news in terms of income and the economy that way. The one thing I really want to touch on is us looking to reopen in line with the government's phasing. So what our objective is to develop realistic timelines and procedures to begin the process of bringing staff back to the regular work locations and normal work hours so that we have the capacity to reopen our administrative facilities and provide that level of service for our residents, you know, still while adhering to provincial and health guidelines. So our phased approach is going to occur, we're looking over the next 2 or 3 weeks. So the goal is to be properly staffed, prepared. We want to limit staff anxiety, ensure that we have the ability to address any of those concerns, whether they're physical separation concerns, you know, within our facility, and also inviting the public back in. So you need to note that not all town facilities may open at the same time. You know, the guidelines vary between right now what we can and can't open. So each one is going to require unique solutions. So the 3-phase approach that we're looking at is, you know, phase 1, prepare facilities for staff to return to the regular work locations. Make sure that the physical separation is in place, limit, you know, the number of people able to meet in certain rooms so that we can be physically separated, have procedures, protocols in place for facility use, you know, cash handling, you know, even clean desk policies, markers on the floors, all those things. So we're actively in that moment right now, I guess, getting plexiglass for the counters, logos and stickers for the floors, looking at traffic flow of people coming in and out, which would bring us to, you know, phase 2, prepare a timeline for staff to return to work at these regular locations. Like I said, all those protocols, looking to still, you know, manage electronic meetings. So trying to keep all those things in place. So as far as timelines go, it's really, we're looking to be in line with the provincial government, right? As this province moves to phase 2 of stage 1 this week, going to give us a little better handle on that. So I think the viability of a date for start, you know, at the earliest would be June 1st. It may be later, depending on what the government has to say this next week, but at least beginning those preparation phases for our facilities and our staff and that mindset and making sure we're protecting our residents and our staff has already been taking place. So we want to be prepared, but we're looking to, like I said, have those doors open with some restrictions in place, but to be able to offer that level of service. So that's with respect to town guidelines. I want to pass it over to Director of Corporate Services, Jeff Morrison, to talk a little bit more about the email that he sent out and the financial implications and some of the things that he's looking for from you on credit card use and the like with respect to opening and inviting public back. So, and then we can get back to the motion that I asked for before. So Jeff, if you can.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, through the chair. On that note, in preparation for the potential reopening of Town Hall, in the preparation for the reopening of municipal facilities due to the current COVID-19 environment, we are looking to eliminate the acceptance of credit cards outside of recreation services and virtual City Hall. Approximately 15% of in-person transactions are processed through credit cards, assessed based on total transaction value. I had finance earlier today pull some statistics as it pertains to the February transaction count. So there were 882 transactions run through the POS machine, which is our point of sale machine at the tax counter, for the February installment due date. Out of those, 64% were credit card related transactions, which represents 564 transactions, touch points at that counter. So due to the current environment, we're trying to limit the amount of touch points. So there's, on the property tax side, we've created kind of a smorgasbord of items available for individuals to pay different ways. We have Dropbox, we have virtual City Hall, we have pre-authorized payment plans, we have mail, we have post-dated checks, we have online banking, we have telephone banking. There's pretty much a substitute for any type of payment that an individual would like to make at the counter. On that note too, we're looking at ways to mitigate the financial impact and burden associated with the COVID-19 pandemic and reducing the costs that have been historically subsidized by the general levy and all residents in the municipality. So the cost in the municipality has historically been, I have some figures here that I pulled from past reports also. In 2014, we were subsidizing credit card usage in the amount of about $120,000 per year. We went to market and we changed vendors, and we reported back to council in May of 2018 and put a $1,000 cap on taxation. And that dropped it to about $60,000 per year. However, with an increase in building and development in the municipality, that's also, you can pay by credit card through that, it's sitting at about $80,000 per year that the town is absorbing for the use of credit cards. Based on some of the statistics, like I said, it's about 15% of in-person transactions. So about 15% of individuals that come into the counter to pay by credit card. So we would like to, so I'm looking for approval for the elimination of the use of credit cards for all payments that are processed outside of recreation services and virtual City Hall, and extend the waiver of the processing fee for credit card transactions on virtual City Hall until December 31st, 2020. And we'll report back to council in or around that time to give you an update on how things are trending. Any questions?
I can't see anybody. Any questions from council? I can't see anybody.
Even to me, I guess.
Yeah.
Moved.
No questions? Sorry. Hold on, we're just having a, okay, here we go. Any questions? No, okay, Chris, you.
Yeah, so through your worship, there's two motions I guess we're looking for tonight. One was to, I'm looking for my wording, was to prorate the seasonal slip season from May 1st to June 1st, from 23 weeks to 19 weeks. So that's step one. If we want to deal with that motion.
Yeah.
If someone cares to make that motion, that's just.
Yeah, let's do that first. Okay, Councillor Van and Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions on it? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Oh, you had a question, Councillor Bjorkman? No?
Yeah, I just had a question just with regard to that part of the report, bringing things back on. When are we going to be able to have some public washrooms open with regard to the marina and the parks?
Doug will have to answer that. Doug?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're still waiting on that. I know the local health unit just recently announced when they did open up marinas that public washrooms are still to remain closed. So we're still just waiting on our direction from our local health unit on that one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have that motion. All in favor of the motion? Okay, that one's carried. Second motion,
I'm gonna let Jeff Morrison.
Jeff, go
take
ahead.
this 'cause I'm gonna butcher it completely, so.
Jeff?
Through the chair, I just want to provide clarification also that this would be for so the motion is elimination of the use of credit cards for all payments that are processed outside of recreation services and virtual city hall, and extend the waiver of the processing fee for credit card transactions on virtual city hall until December 31st, 2020. All transactions, this isn't just tax related. This is development charges, this is building permit, this is planning applications, this is dog licenses. So this is all transactions where we, any transaction through credit card, we absorb and we subsidize that fee. So this is all transactions. And like I said, there are substitutes. There's virtual city hall. And we have also set it up with our bank where you can, so historically under your banking provider, if you went on and did online banking, you could make a payment on your tax account through your roll number. We have the flexibility with our banking provider where now you can go on and you can enter the town of Essex and you can enter a customer number. So you can make other payments that fall outside of taxation through your online banking. So if you had a building permit or development charges that you need to pay, you could enter the customer number and you could pay it through your online banking.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions? Did you have a question, Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's more of a statement. I like it. I want to support it. Is there a way, Alex is off right now, but I think we need to do some promotion on this because we could have a lot of angry people, you know, at town hall trying to go there and pay their credit cards, where the more we push the message out, the more we can stop that and be proactive on the item.
Okay, Chris, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, through your worship, thank you for the question. Yeah, Alex is off, but we have measures in place to absorb and make sure that promotional and press releases get out. Absolutely, part of the staged, the three-phase approach includes a heavy amount of communications with our residents, right? They need to know when we're going to open, what the limitations are, what restrictions there are, what they can and can't do, and that will definitely be you know, payment is going to be high on the list of information, as well as signage outside the facilities, signage inside the facility. So, yep, for sure, that will happen.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Councillor Vandendoel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Morrison, I'm a little bit confused on something. We're going to ban credit cards altogether, or I thought there was an option that if you wanted to use one, you'd pay the 2 or 4% extra cost that falls to us.
Through the chair, we reviewed with our POS provider, our point of sale provider, and they identified that we cannot charge a transaction fee on or over the phone. It's not legal, so we cannot do that. However, if it's an online transaction, we can charge a transaction fee. So Virtual City Hall has that built into it. And the second part of my motion or my request was to extend the waiver of the processing fee for credit card transactions on Virtual City Hall until December 31st, 2020. And we are one of the only lower tier municipalities in the county that accept credit card payments. There's only one other, and they do it through a third party that charges the transaction fee.
Thank you. As you know, I'm fully in favor of not having other taxpayers absorb the fees for this, even though I used to do this myself. But I know that sometimes you're in a tight financial situation, and your credit card debt is the easiest way to go. So, I mean, I can imagine myself having said extra 2% or 4%. Fine, I'm doing this for a month or 2 months or whatever. So as long as the option is still there, I'm completely in favor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? So I need somebody to make that motion. Councillor Bowman. and Counselor Van Dolen, all in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, just a point of information. Mr. Cassidy wants to apologize for his comments that he said that we all heard that we probably shouldn't have said.
That's fine.
He just wanted to.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 8.2 on this evening's agenda is Economic Development Report 2020-05. This contains the April 2020 building report together with the development overview for receipt this evening by council.
Need a motion, please, Deputy Mayor Malash. Seconder. Counselor Bowman, any questions on it? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 8.3 was dealt with earlier this evening as 6.1. 8.4 on the agenda this evening is Parks and Facilities Report 2020-02, results of requests for tender to remove, supply, and install 4 condensing boilers. That said report be received and that council awards the request for tender to Lecter Industrial Services in the amount of $68,992.27, and that council further approves the addition of a 3rd domestic hot water boiler at the Essex Center Sports Complex, and that the funding for this new asset in the amount of $15,820 and that the funding come from by reallocating $10,000 from project CS 200047, with the remaining $58,20 to be funded through a forecasted under expenditure in the operating budget account, building and repairs.
Need a motion to receive it, please. Approve it. Counselor Bjorkman and Counselor Vandendal. Any questions? All in favor of it? Oh, did you have a question, Counselor Gary? Did you have a question? Go ahead. Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Doug. Doug, I feel for the groups that haven't been able to enjoy a hot shower for a few years now. The arena has been open for, I think, 11 years now. These are the original boilers, I assume. And are there only 2 boilers like for hot water now? So basically, we have 2 and replacing the 2. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, these are the original boilers. We are replacing 2 and add 2 new ones and adding a 3rd one for domestic hot water.
Okay, so further to that, Doug, it's saying that the 2 right now can supply approximately 200 gallons, and that at our peak, we need to run almost double that. So I'm just trying to do math. How is just one additional boiler going to help that?
Mr. Mayor, we had a 3rd-party consultant, mechanical engineer, come in and do a review and study. And based on that report, that's what the recommendation is. And it's a special type of boiler. So with these 3, we'll be able to do the 388 gallons per minute, which he says will accommodate our peak times. I'm going by the recommendation of the mechanical engineer.
Okay, and just one last thing then, Doug. So like I said, the arena's been around for about 11 years. It's just of recent, I believe, maybe the last 3-4 years tops, we've been getting complaints from user groups. So do you think the complaints are driven by the fact that the boilers of recently just aren't any good and they need to be replaced, in addition to the fact that they don't meet the capacity needs? Or is this something that just came out of the blue? And or has people been complaining since day one and we just haven't done anything about it?
Mr. Mayor, I think some of the councilors have been on for a while. I've heard these complaints probably for 8 to 10 years since the arena's been open. And it's not that we haven't done anything about it. We've been constantly troubleshooting. We're more looking at the refrigeration side that was causing the issue. This is a new path we took, and it seems to be may be able to resolve the issue finally.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay. Anybody else? So all in favor of the motion? I think we already had a, yeah. Thank you.
8.5, Mr. Mayor, is Parks and Facilities Report 2020-05. Results of request for tender for Colchester Harbor Dock B replacement. Said report for receipt, Net Council awards to Crop Industrial Inc. in the amount of $160,000, $180.42.
Need a motion, please, to approve this? Motion, Counselor Bondi and Counselor Bjorkman. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Did you have a question, Deputy Mayor? Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, I did. Just to Mr. Sweet, our Director of Community Services, how many slips on that Dock B, Mr. Sweet?
So currently there'll be 17, but we'll be able to add up to 22. So we're adding 5 more. Also currently it's unserviced and we'll be able to have it serviced moving forward.
Okay, that's the other question then. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Eight point six on the agenda this evening is Operations Report 2020-02. Results of request for tender for the supply and application of maintenance stone 2020. That said report be received and that council awards to Southwestern Sales Corporation Limited in the amount of $160,000.
Need a motion, please? Counselor Bowman and Counselor Vandendahl. Any questions on this one here? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Eight point seven on the agenda this evening is Planning Report 2020-09, and this is in conjunction with Bylaw 1915, being a bylaw to release the subdivision agreement over parts 1 and 2 on 12R 27717. That said report be received, that Bylaw 1915 receive 3 readings and be finally passed this evening, and that the town be directed to execute all documents necessary to give effect to this repeal as described in Bylaw 1915.
Need a mover for the report, Deputy Mayor Malash and Counselor Vandendahl. Questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 8.8 on this evening's agenda is Operations Report 2020-03. Results of requests for tender, supply of winter control equipment for a tandem plow truck and supply of a tandem plow truck cab and chassis 2020. The said report be received and that the award for requests for tenders be as follows. Number 1, for the supply of winter control equipment for a tandem plow truck, that the award be made to Viking Seeds in the amount of $144,888.94. And 2, that the supply of the tandem plow truck cab and chassis be awarded to Team Truck Centers Limited in the amount of $160,148.80. And further, that council approves the additional funding of $25,037.74 above the approved 2020 capital budget amount from the town's asset management life cycle reserve.
Need a motion to receive this? Counselor Bowman and Counselor Berby. Any questions from council? Counselor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, maybe to our CAO or to Mr. Gerard. I don't even know if he's here, but who does the lettering on all of our town trucks? Does that go out of town? Do we have a company in town? Is it the same company that does all of our logos and markings on our trucks? And that's it.
I think.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because I haven't been here too long, I can't actually answer that question. So maybe I can pass it on to either Chris or Doug, who will have an idea who does our lettering for us.
Chris, did you?
Through your worship, it's varied over the years because it is such a small amount. It's under the value procurement that requires an RFP or an RFQ. So I'm not sure who we're at this year, but I know it has varied from you know, local to outside as well. So I can find out who we're looking at for this truck in particular, but all I can say is it's varied over the years.
Okay. Councillor Bowman, did you have a question?
Just a quick question. Is there any chance of delays on receiving this equipment because of the COVID-19 issues?
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. There is actually, we did touch base with them, and there shouldn't be an issue with receiving this truck. There is obviously a delay in having this truck manufactured and some of the extras that come with the dump body and things like that. So we probably wouldn't see this truck until early next year.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Item 9, Mr. Mayor, reports from youth members. I didn't hear back from the youth council members. I don't know if Councillor Verbeek heard from our youth members.
No. No.
Item 10, any updates from county council?
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I'll just speak on both our behalves, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. Really nothing of concern to specifically to the town of Essex. Some tenders that we're going to be passing, a couple of reports from different boards that report to the county. A lot of correspondence. There's a few articles in there that I believe that we'll be having discussion on, and of course a county COVID-19 update. But nothing that would seriously affect anything with the town of Essex at this point in time.
We didn't, Deputy Mayor Malash, it was in the paper. It's been in the paper about the Leamington situation. Should we, because those are residents that's got to be relocated too, eh? So just to let council know, we are working as a county, we are working on that situation in Leamington with that home there. So, thank you.
Item 11 this evening, correspondence to be received, that all of the correspondence listed in agenda item 11.1 be received and where indicated to further ship.
Any questions on any of the correspondence? I need, go ahead, Councilor Verbeek.
Thanks through you, Mr. Mayor. Just because we don't have the paper agenda in front of us, could maybe Mr. Auger remind us what is in that package of, thank you. So I see we have the Fun Fest, and what other correspondence is in this package?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we've included on the agenda some recent releases that have come from the town. There is correspondence from the Premier's office as we get updates, so we've included some of those. There is correspondence from the town of Grimsby in which they provided support for the commercial rent assistance programs. 11.1.3 is an update on an AMO position paper on the OPP detachment boards, providing or discussion paper for when those discussions pick up after the health emergency. We have a recent Essex Waste Solid Waste Authority landfill liaison committee meeting agenda that has been inserted on there for information purposes. And then the last piece of correspondence is actually in conjunction with correspondence in 11.2, in which we're asking for council to either to receive or support. This is correspondence from the Windsor Essex County Health Unit, providing their position on a recent cannabis retail application as it relates to a proposed location at 6 King Street in Harrow.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I did have some comments on a few of those correspondence. First off, you know, the recommendations that AMO sent to the province. I was really grateful to see that they one of their recommendations is that the province relinquish the ability to you know, to stop appointing to our police service boards and leave it within the hands of the municipality. Whether or not that'll come to pass, we'll see. But I was glad to see that AMO held that position. You guys have. You can't see in my screen, but I'm holding up this monster size report from our Solid Waste Authority. And tomorrow night, the deputy mayor and myself will be in a meeting about this report. So I'm hoping that if any of you have any comments or questions or input, that you forward them to the deputy mayor and myself prior to tomorrow night, so we can bring this to our landfill liaison meeting tomorrow night. And as far as the last correspondence about the marijuana shop in Harrow, I would at this point only support receiving it until I had some more, you know, input from or information about it. To me, just looking at it, it looks like it's, you know, outside of the provincial recommendations for, you know, its distance from certain bodies. I think a youth group or a youth zone or a school and such. So receiving it for sure, supporting it. I'd like to hear from other councillors on their thoughts on it. That is all. Thank you.
Anybody else from council? Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Couple things myself. The town of Grimsby won the support for commercial rent assistance program. I agree with receiving that, but part of the language in there is that all of the assistance programs should be forgiven. So they want to have all of their rent not delayed, but deferred, which just isn't going to happen for anybody. So for that, I would just receive. I agree with Councillor with regard to the OPP. It was good to see that they were relinquishing the authority to make appointments for the government. That's what they're going to push for. We should be able to take care of that ourselves, especially if we go to these regional boards where representatives should all be from the municipality and from the local governments. And as far as the health unit item goes, the only problem that's there is Access Youth is 3 doors down from where that new marijuana store is going to be setting up shop. So we don't have a school in there, but we have kids from kindergarten to grade 12 at different times during the week, 3 doors away from a proposed marijuana shop. So I believe that is a concern, and we probably can talk to that more in 11.2. Thank you.
Yeah, so I need a motion just.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe we have a motion moved by Councillor Bondi, seconded by Councillor. Oh, I could be mistaken. Sorry. I believe we, no, my apologies. We do still need a motion.
Yeah, I need a motion to receive this. Councillor Bondi and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
(11.2.1) under correspondence to be considered for either receipt or support is correspondence from the Township of Armour dated April 29, 2020, which correspondence has been sent and is asking the Premier of Ontario to support the making of substantial investments in high-speed internet connectivity in the rural areas of Ontario. And if so, either for receipt or receipt and support, and if so supported, that the appropriate letter of support be sent.
Deputy Mayor Malash, you made your support?
Receive and support.
Okay.
Receive support.
Okay, seconder, Councilor Verbeek, any questions? Questions? Go ahead, Councilor. Van Andola?
Oh, you go, okay.
Bondi.
Councilor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After we pass this, is it possible, like Councilor Bjorkman did, is to make another motion saying that that the council direct administration to develop an internet strategy to provide access to all areas of our municipality? Today I went through the corporate plan, and in here is an internet strategy, and I feel like if we don't throw a wad of paper towels at the wall sooner, then I think it could escape us altogether this term of council. So I would like to receive and support this, but then after I would like to, if possible, give further direction to administration to develop an internet strategy for our municipality in all the pockets.
Yeah, I like Chris to speak.
Get through the first one.
Yeah, we'll get through the first one first. Okay, all in favor of that first one? Did I have a motion? Yeah.
You did.
Okay, all in favor of that? Okay, your second motion, go ahead, Councilor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just that council give direction to administration to develop an internet strategy to provide internet to all areas of our municipality.
Yeah, if I can just speak on that just for 1 second, Councilor, I think our CAO has been working.
Point of order. In order to address that at all, it needs to be seconded.
Go ahead. Need a seconder, please, for her motion, Councilor Vanendel. Any questions? Okay, Chris is going to speak on it first.
Yeah, and then Councilor Vanderbilt has a question, but through your worship, there's no need to throw any wet paper towels at the wall and see if they're going to stick. I think you've already given us direction in terms of you've adopted the strategic plan. It's in the strategic plan. It's something that is being worked on. That's your mandate as council for the next 4 years. That's your game plan. So it's in there. We currently work, we're working with anybody that knocks at our door, right? And then some. So I've reached out to some of the suppliers. It's something we continue to do. You've got, two kind of things in motion right now. You've got SWIFT, which the only thing I've been told is it's ongoing. It's ongoing and it's in motion. I'm hoping to have some news in the next month or so with respect to SWIFT. The other thing you've got is the CRTC, the application that I believe a couple of the other suppliers or are applying for. That's something that council has already supported. So, I think in the next month or so, you're going to see a few things pan out with respect to the CRTC, the RFP and then SWIFT. And then, we continue to move in that direction. So not a motion needed. I think it's just, it's motion, need to formalize it. And then, like I said, let's wait a month or so, see what happens with CRTC and SWIFT, and then come back to council.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I know Deputy Mayor Malash, we sit on county council. I know they've been working through SWIFT there. And what was the latest, Deputy Mayor, that we got? I just can't remember. What was the date at the timeline there?
Similar to what Chris, our CAO, was saying, over the next year. And I know that a lot of us county council members are not really pleased with the speed that it's moving, and it's quite often a topic of conversation. And I got to believe that maybe the mayor or myself are going to bring it up again at this next meeting under new business to find out where they're at. It's very irregular that we get an update, and there's a lot of frustration at the county level because SWIFT they're not going to bring it to our doors. We're going to have a provider that's going to bring it to our doors after SWIFT comes in. What SWIFT is going to do is lay the larger network so that the smaller providers can tap into that larger network and bring it down rural roads and bring it down right into people's homes. So really, to make it affordable, you almost have to have, in rural areas, you have to have that larger network in order to provide good, reliable internet. And I think too, I mentioned in an email, we have to be looking at a provider that's going to give us reasonable costs once they have our municipality covered with wire and picking up all the customers. We don't want a provider that's going to charge us double what another provider would have charged our residents today, tomorrow, and way into the future. We don't want to tie ourselves into one provider that's going to be charging astronomical fees that are just going to make it unaffordable for people too. We have to look, there's multiple aspects that we have to look at when we're trying to decide who we're going to go with.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Vandendolen. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, Mr. Mayor, the broadband internet access is something close to my heart. I ran on it as one of my major campaign platforms, and I've been spending a lot of time doing research and talking to people about it. And I think some of you saw a position paper I wrote about it last year. And I disagree with Mr. Nepsy that we should sit back and accept what happens to us. And in that sense, I'm in favor of what Councillor Bondi is suggesting, that we discuss this, because I think we need to decide what the minimum we will accept is and what the maximum is we want. And what the maximum is we want fiber to every home in the whole town, not just the shore of Lake Erie, which is easy, not just the town centers of Harrow and McGregor and Essex. That's easy. That's the low hanging fruit. That's the high profit stuff that those guys want. We need to kind of drive some kind of deal where we get the internet to all the back roads too, the way Amherstburg has and the way Lakeshore and to some extent Kingsville are actually moving toward. And if we don't use the leverage we have, then we're not going to get that. We're just going to let them grab the low hanging fruit, make their millions and run. So I think we should discuss this. Swift, what a joke that name is. I mean, 2 years ago, I was sitting in council as a potential candidate, listening to some guy from Swift tell Essex Town Council that, well, we have a plan, but we can't tell you what it is, and we're going to put some fiber down. We can't tell you where. Why not? Why is it a secret? We need to know this stuff. We need to discuss it. And from what I understand, what Swift is they will produce or provide the interconnects between the big population centers to make sure that it's the low density residential areas that finally get access. So we need to be in there saying, yes, we want it down the Yarner Town line, we want it down Walker Road, or we want it down County Road 15, or whatever the way it is, so that we can branch out from there. And somebody said, whoever we go with, like right there, I'm opposed to that. We've got to have more than one company operating in this town if we want competition to provide good service. Amherstburg, they took a gamble and they went totally with Bell. Good luck to them, but I don't think that's what we want to do, because you don't want to be beholden to one company only, especially that one. So I think that we should get a bunch of suppliers. You've got Wave Direct wants to come in from the Kingsville side. Somebody else wants to come in from the Amherstburg side, apparently. And we've got several players who can come down from the north. And I know, I can't tell you how, but I know for a fact that more bundles, big fat orange bundles of fiber are going to be laid right through the town of Essex, several of them. And we need to make sure that through Swift, we get access to that to our residents. So I'd love to have an open discussion about this, please.
Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate Councillor Vandendolen and Councillor Bondi's remarks on this. I'm not sure. I'm also grateful, Deputy Mayor Meloche, that you volunteered to bring it back to County Council, because it wasn't a huge issue for me. But being here in my rural ward, it is a huge part of my casework right now, with people trying to do their schoolwork and working from home. That's what my constituents are reaching out to me about right now. And so whatever we can do to get this ball rolling and to push this file forward would be really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think probably, like, listening to everybody talking, and I've heard stories here. I've heard from people on the other side of town. I've heard people coming from Kingsville, some of these stories. I think it maybe what we need to do is have a meeting before our next council meeting an hour long where we sit down, and if we have to have some in-camera session part of it, so that if there is negotiation, if there are things going on behind the scenes, that there's a little more openness with the whole group. Because what I hear is bits and pieces, even right now as we're talking, nobody's really sure. We've heard this might be. I think it's just a very good education session for our council with our admin to say, okay, who is coming at us? What's going on? Okay, we can't talk about it, but it's important for us to all be on the same page and understand what's coming our way. So maybe we need to have a sit down for an hour and just be informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bondi?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This file is definitely not a strength of mine. It sounds like it's more Councillor Vanderdolen's strength, but I'm just listening to people, and I've been listening to people for many years now. And I tried to bring it up and spearhead it in 2018 just to get the public conversation going. And we're trying again a few times. I do believe we maybe need a working committee with 1 or 2 councillors or the mayor and a couple of members of administration to really take on the work. And that I have no interest in that. I just think that we need to keep raising these discussions because it's urgent and it's timely. And in our strategic plan, we talk about, we will ensure we are on track through regular communications with council and citizens. This is a file that we have to keep the ball up in the air, like volleyball. We have to keep that ball up in the air until we get results, because I've been on council now for a while and nothing has changed. So I really like Councillor Bjorkman's idea about having a 5 o'clock start before our next meeting to talk about this, because we never know if another pandemic is going to hit us. And you have articles in the paper showing that there's inequalities with online learning. So if we're not doing everything that we can as a government to push this forward at little or no cost to our residents, then I think at this point we're failing our citizens. So I love all the conversations and the ideas. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Sean.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a motion on the floor. I don't know if it's the desire of council to table that.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can I modify the motion that we do what Councillor Bjorkman suggested, to have a meeting in the next 2 or 3 months?
Okay, yeah. Do you want to make that motion, or? Okay.
I think we need to. I can withdraw the motion, and administration just knows in the next 2 to 3 months, I think we want to do the 5 o'clock meeting.
Yeah.
If
good.
it's okay with the seconder.
Withdraw the motion. Who made that motion? Yeah, you're going to withdraw the motion? Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 11.2.2 is correspondence for either receipt or receipt and support, is correspondence from the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario advising of a cannabis application for 6 King Street East in Carroll for either receipt or receipt and support, or if council chooses to file an objection, that a letter be sent to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission stating the reasons for the objection. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the last date for comments to be made to the AGCO would be May 23rd. So we would need direction if there is a desire along those lines. Okay.
What would the desire of the council be on this one? Councillor Bowman. Go ahead.
Yeah, as Councillor Steve just mentioned a few minutes ago, there's a youth thing just about 3 doors from it. So I don't think at this time it's the council's should either support or deny or not support the application, but simply send the notice that this other place exists just a few doors away, and let the board decide what they're going to do with that added information. I think there's pros and cons whether you want it there or not, but they should be made aware of this place 3 doors away.
So are you going to make that motion, Counselor?
Yeah, I'd make that motion.
Okay, good. Counselor Bjorkman, you had a question. Oh, I need a seconder first. Need a seconder on the motion. No seconder? Counselor Verbeek. Discussion. Counselor Bjorkman, you had a question?
Yeah, just a couple comments. I struggle with this one because it's a great location. I've always been a fan of a standalone building. If you're going to have this, you don't have neighbors that you're impinging on. They got a parking lot. All of the components of the store are perfect. It's right downtown. However, 3 doors down, we have a youth center. Now, Access has been in there for a couple of years, and I spoke earlier with Director Sweet with regard to can we find a new home for the youth center. One of the places we had talked about before was the Lions Hall, which is on the fairgrounds, that hasn't been taken over yet. It's still vacant. I know that we as a town support Access Youth with a good yearly financial support that goes towards helping pay their rent. So this is something that maybe we can find a way to work together to win in both situations. So it just, again, it's difficult for me. If the youth center is staying there, then I would not be in favor of a marijuana shop 3 doors away. Again, they bring the kids to daycare after school. You got kids from kindergarten through grade 8 coming through. And then during the week, they have youth nights where you have high school students that we're bringing through there that they're walking right by. Are they going to walk by anyway? Yes, they are. But is it our job to try to find the best spots in our town for some of these activities? So right now I'm conflicted with it. I'd love to see an opportunity to both of these things work out. And I just want to listen to what other people have to say about it. Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since this is in my ward, I did take a picture of this notice and I did put it on my social media, and I'm hearing overwhelming support for this location as a standalone and for a storefront in our community. The City of Windsor is going to have 20 stores. I do understand that there is a youth center there, but there's really no really good places in Harrow, especially that are standalone. So I pretty much feel like if this council is going to want a store in Harrow, this is the best place. The youth center, the design of the youth center and the design of the old Max, they don't even share a parking lot. Most of the parents that go to the youth center park at the public parking lot and walk south. And the marijuana store would have its own parking lot. And I believe the Max sold cigarettes. So, you know, if they sold cigarettes, and which were legal, and marijuana is legal, I can't see how we can deny it. High school students are vaping in Tim Hortons bathrooms, right? This isn't going to change what they're doing. It's going to provide a legal source of marijuana in Harrow, and it's going to provide traffic flow to Harrow, which we need. All of our stores, Canadell, Blimey's, you know, the Dreaming Tree, we need this traffic flow, especially near the end of a pandemic. So I actually think, I feel very strongly on this, partially because my residents feel very strongly about not having another vacant storefront in town. I do really like Councillor Bjorkman's idea about allowing access to rent the Kinsman or the Lions Hall at the arena. I think that is a good problem solving and out of the box idea. Thank you.
Councillor Vanendom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, yes, I agree with Councillor Bondi and Councillor Bjorkman that there may be a way through by cutting a deal with the proprietors of this proposed store and the youth center. But like Councillor Bondi said, I'm in favor of this too, as are most of my constituents. I don't know how many people use the youth center, but I know a lot more will use the cannabis store. And I think it's very hypocritical of people to have supported the legalization of marijuana and voted for the party who promised it because they did so, and then oppose, well, not in my backyard. You know, I think this is sending a really bad message to the public. And it's not as though we pretend there's no alcohol, we pretend there's no cigarettes, or we pretend there's no beer. We've got those stores that are you know, children get to see them. And I don't see any problem with children seeing the cannabis store. They're going to be dealing with it soon enough anyway. No, I think we should pursue perhaps moving that group, maybe negotiating a little bit of support there, but I think we need the store too. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Milosh.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I too think it's a perfect location. I'm not opposed to giving the go-ahead from the town of Essex. The youth center could be gone in a year, regardless of what we try and, you know, whether we try and move it or not. I've got a feeling the store would be there for it'll be a very permanent part of the current downtown wherever it goes. There's liquor stores in town. If the liquor store had wanted to transfer to this location, would we be having the same conversation? I'm not sure we would. It's something that I believe with cannabis being legal in Canada now, I think it's more about educating our youth than trying to keeping it out of sight. And although it may not be the best of situations to have a youth center just a couple of doors down, I still think that this is probably one of the best locations. As Councillor Bjorkman has said, it's a standalone building. And we know from an experience that we've already had in the town that a standalone building is the preferable solution to not having problems that we'll have to deal with later. So I'm totally in support of having this location. I believe residents are looking forward to having a cannabis store in the town of Harrow, and hopefully we can get one in Essex Center as well, maybe in McGregor Center. So we'll see what happens. But I'm in support of this location. Maybe we do want to come up with an idea to see if we can get the youth center to move to the Lions, if that's something that actually bothers some residents or bothers other councillors. But again, cannabis is with us. It's going to be here going forward, and it's something that we have to accept in our lives, whether you were for or against it previously. And it's really all about education. The young people have to be educated that it's out there. It's just like alcohol. It's out there, and you have to know when you can use it and how to use it. And you know, they're not going to be able to go into the stores and purchase it. The cannabis stores are very well aware, just like the LCBOs are, that they're not going to sell to youth. So I have no problem with this location. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will also be supporting the location. Councillor Bowman. Scott, you're muted there. Hold on, Councillor.
Okay, I'm on now. Sorry. My motion was not either to support or oppose. So obviously more people are in favor of the supporting it. And I guess I don't have a problem with that, but I think you have to deal with the youth center. So how do we handle that? Because if we don't let them know that it's there, we're sort of falling back on our duty as well. So if we want to say it's there and say we'll try and negotiate a different site for it, I don't have a problem with that either. But the motion as I presented it didn't say that. So I should withdraw that motion because it's not conveying what the general discussion is. So the motion should really address the issue of the youth center as well as supporting the location of the shop. So I'm not sure how that should be worded, but
you want to restate your motion then, Counselor?
yeah, I'd say that we should support the application, but also note that there's a youth center in close proximity. And if you wish, we can ask or state that we will try to have it relocated. And I don't know what the feeling is there, whether we could do that or not. So I'll make that my motion and we'll see what happens.
Is there a seconder on that motion there? Counselor Verbeek? All in favor of that motion? Opposed?
I see show of hands.
Show of hands again on support, please. Now you support it.
I can't support that motion.
So we only got 4 on that, Mr. Mayor.
Can we read the motion for clarification, please?
That the correspondence from the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario be received and supported, but in the letter sent to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission, that it be noted that there is a youth center in close proximity to the proposed location, and that the town will engage in trying to work with the applicant in a relocation of the proposed physical location
of the teen center. Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I will not be supporting the motion because I believe it's up to the youth center to provide their feedback to the province. I think that their executive director is well connected and he's probably listening to this conversation, or he's aware they can provide their own feedback. I do believe we can work with accommodating them at a different facility, but I don't want that dependent on whether or not we support the location. I believe whether we support the location has to be a standalone. If we can then move the youth center at a later date, that's a bonus. But as it stands right now, I think we should only be voting on whether we support the location, regardless of anything else.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bowman, did you want to?
The motion actually states that we support the application, but that we note that there is a youth center in close proximity, and we'll try to make arrangements to relocate it. Because I think it's on us to let the gaming board know that it is there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Guerin?
I think Councillor Bondi hit it right on the head. I agree 100% with all of her comments with respect to it. I don't want to put the stipulation in there that we will help the youth center find another location or work with them. As far as letting the Gaming Commission know what's going on, they should be privy to the same information that's before us, that there is already a community center there, that there is tobacco and cigarettes around there within a certain radius. So I'm for moving forward and approving the location. I think it meets all the needs that we want, with the exception of the fact that, yes, there is a community center that's close by, but I do echo Deputy Mayor Malash's point where there's no guarantee that place will be there forever. I think there's more upside of having that business in Harrow than not. Can we communicate to the youth center that we've approved this? Yes, we could do stuff like that, and can we work with them in the future on a relocate if they have an appetite for that? Yes, we can do that as well, but I don't want it to be a stipulation of approving this, and I don't want us to have to inform the Gaming Commission about anything more than we approve it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van den Dongen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to state my support. I agree with the councillors Guerin and Bondi. I think approving this without any sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink aside, oh, by the way, there's this here. I think just receiving this and approving it and supporting it is more consistent with what we as a council have voted for in the past, which is that we have voted to accept cannabis retailing, and it's more consistent with what the most numbers of our residents and constituents need and want. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Bjorkman.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks everybody for the comments. Like I said, it is the perfect spot. I just had a problem with where it is, but I do agree. We either support it 100% or we write in and we say we're against it because there's a youth center here. So it isn't one or some of the other, it's one or the other. So obviously through the rest of council, it's looking for support. There are good arguments there about how long the youth center will remain, and hopefully we can find some common ground with them outside of this. So I would not go against the rest of council and do support it as the ideal location and the ideal building for this.
Good. I think everybody from council has talked. We knocked this around quite a bit. Councillor Bowman, did you want to change your motion?
Yeah, obviously the reference to the youth center is not favorable to the rest of the council, so I think it should be in there, but that's okay. I withdraw my motion and somebody else make the motion.
Well, you can make the motion to support it if you want.
No, I think
I'll support it.
Okay, no problem. Okay, Councillor Van Adon, you want to make the motion then? Go ahead.
Yes, I move that we support it.
Okay, receive and support. So, seconder, Councillor Bondi, all in favor? All in favor? Opposed? Nobody opposed, carried. Oh, Councillor Bowman opposed. We knocked that one around for a while.
Yeah. Yes. Item 12.1 on the agenda under committee meeting minutes are the Essex Police Service Board minutes from May 7th. As noted earlier, the mayor declared a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I'm going to vacate my seat and I'll hand it over to Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have in these minutes, just trying to get my screen on there, that the town of Essex be requested to appoint another council member to service on the Police Services Board during the mayor's leave of absence period. And this is requested by Vice Chair Verbeek at the Police Services Board meeting. So I'll leave it open for discussion. So, Mr. Auger, I have a question for you. Okay, you know what? I was going to say right now, all I can see because the agenda's on the screen, all I can see is three persons.
Okay. Yeah. My apologies, Mr. Chair.
That's okay. Thank you. That's much better. Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you. I think probably the first thing we should do is we still have a vice chair, and I think we should agree to name Vice Chair Verbeek as chair of the Police Services Board, and then go to the vice chair.
Sorry, you're correct. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So if I can, I would make that motion that we that Vice Chair Verbeek serve temporarily as the chair of the Police Services Board.
Well, moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Bowman, that Vice Chair Verbeek serve as the chair of the Police Services Board during the mayor's absence.
I think Morley has a question.
Morley, you have a question?
Yeah, I think the chair of the Police Services Board is selected by the Police Services Board. I don't think that's our position.
Okay.
They would automatically move her up, but that's their decision, not ours.
So can we get some clarification? Maybe Councillor Verbeek can clarify what's going on here, because this is the Essex Police Services Board's minutes of May the 7th. Councillor Verbeek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, what I know in the past, we had this happen a couple of years ago when Councillor Caxero had to resign, and he was our chair for the rest of the term. The vice chair just stepped into the chair, and then we elected a vice chair. That's what we did when, and that's Councillor Bowman may remember. That's how you moved from vice chair to the chair and finished out the term. I think that Chris would like to speak, and then we can go back to my point.
Okay,
It
thanks.
looks like Chris had, yeah.
Okay. CEO Chris Nepsey.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to have our legal Rob Auger discuss that, but I believe that's the role of the vice chair, so I'll have Rob step in.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to confirm, I was in attendance at the Police Services Board meeting, and they did resolve for Vice Chair Verbeek to serve as chair. So they've already resolved. The ask before council is to basically adopt those, confirm that recommendation, but the actual decision was made through resolution at the police services level. The main ask for council this evening is in regards to a replacement from one of their own to serve on the committee.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. So back to where we started then. I'll leave it open for discussion. They are looking for the Town of Essex Council to appoint another council member to serve on the Police Services Board. Councillor Verbeek.
Yes, thanks, Robert, for clarifying that. Yes, indeed. And that our task at hand right now is for us as a council to get a temporary replacement for the mayor in his time as he's stepping aside. So when it comes time that we will be nominating someone that will be taking his place, I would like to make a nomination. Does anybody else want to speak first or volunteer?
I think I have a number of people that want to speak, so maybe we'll have people speak first, and then, well, go ahead and make your nomination, Kim.
All right,
And then-
thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Mr. Chair. My thoughts are, I thought about this a lot because right now we are in the process of, as you all, if you've been following all the notes, this has been, you know, since the change in the Police Service Board reached Royal Assent, we've been moving, the province has been moving towards bringing all the detachments in the province to one board for any that have, we have 6 police detachments and 5 police service boards that are going to be forming one board. And so my thoughts on this were that because Councillor Bowman has got extensive experience on the police service board, and I'm talking multiple times on the service board, and he was part of all the meetings when we were with the previous government, you know, providing a lot of input in the change of our PSA when we opened it up, and then it's now, it now has another acronym, but it's our police service. Anyway, we are now under, Councillor Bowman is very, very familiar with all this. He's served multiple times as the chair. He's got a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge of the board. I found this a really challenging board to catch on. I was going through the motions, and thank goodness I had Councillor Caxero and then later Councillor Bowman that were able to kind of help catch me up to speed, because I found I had more questions than anything the first my whole first year. And I think that at this point, while we're in such a such a transition, the experience that Councillor Bowman could bring to the table if he's willing to serve would be beneficial. But so I would nominate him to be the replacement.
Thank you, Councillor Verbeek. I believe Councillor Bjorkman was next.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could we have a seconder on that nomination?
Seconded by Councillor Guerin.
Thank you.
Can I speak to it?
Yes, we'll go back to you then, Councillor Guerin. Councillor Bjorkman, are you okay with that? Okay. Councillor Guerin?
Yeah, so just to piggyback on what Councillor Verbeek was saying, with the mayor stepping down and we're looking for an intern replacement in the time being, I think, yeah, adding someone with the experience that Councillor Bowman has is going to be favorable. Throwing someone like myself who's unexperienced into it would just be a catch up. I don't know if I'd be any use to it. So that's why I would be seconding Councillor Verbeek's recommendation on Councillor Bowman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bjorkman.
Yes, thank you to the chair. I wanted to nominate Deputy Mayor Meloche, as he is the deputy mayor and steps in for the mayor in his position, also dealing with the county in all levels of what we're doing. We're bringing the county together through the Police Services Board as well. So I would like to nominate Deputy Mayor Meloche.
I'm going to speak for a second before we get a seconder on that. Councillor Bjorkman, I appreciate you stepping up and because I had a similar opinion that I was going to put my name out there, but I think with Councillor Verbeek's argument, I believe that she has put a very wise move forward here, and I would feel that perhaps he would be a better candidate as well, even though if there hadn't been somebody else with more experience, I would say the deputy mayor would be a good choice to put in to that role. And but I thank you, Councillor Bjorkman, for nominating me. I'm going to withdraw even if I had a seconder. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Meloche. I just want to shed some comments on this, that if we go ahead with Councillor Bowman tonight, we have all reps from the northern end of our municipality. There is no representation in the southern end of our municipality. So, so that being said, I know I don't have a shot of getting it, so I wouldn't even put my name forward, but I just want to point it out that I think if this council experience, when you give experience to only experienced people, new people can't get experience, right? And you don't really look at the succession planning of what you're doing within an organization, right? If you keep the experience in the tight-knit groups, only the tight-knit groups get experience. And I don't think it adequately represents the needs of our municipality. I've been very active with policing files in the southern end of the municipality, and I have a lot of experience, just not on the Police Services Board. So I just want to make sure that tonight I say that, because the residents we represent also include the southern half. And, you know, there's Councillor Vanderdolen, Councillor Bjorkman, and myself, who all may or may not serve, but just because somebody has experience, that's the person that council is going to go with. And I don't always necessarily think it's fair for our residents and fair for our council.
Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have to say that Councillor Bondi will admit that she and I have had this conversation before. I don't experience is helpful but it's not always the way to go. And but in this case, the reason that I was nominating Councillor Bowman for his experience is because the Police Service Board, the rest of them across province, is in flux right now. Like, we are moving forward and there's all kinds of change, and the historical knowledge that Councillor Bowman would bring to this time of transition would be valuable. But absolutely, I am all for succession planning, and you know better than anybody, Councillor Bondi, that I'm not crazy about always giving the person with the most experience position just for that reason. But in this case, the reason that I did nominate Councillor Bowman was because we're at a time of change. This is not how our police service board is going to look next year. We will most likely, we will have one person at the table, one person from every municipality. And so having a voice of experience during this transition time, well, they are listening to us, whether our advice and whether our input is really whether they're taking it into the heart remains to be seen, but at least we're able to have a voice. And I felt like someone with that much experience would have some value to add to the consultations that are still ahead of us on this.
Thank you, Councillor Verbeek. Councillor Vanderdolen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, you know, I was holding out for somebody with more than only 30 years experience, but I thought, well, maybe we won't find. No, all kidding aside, I think Councillor Bowman brings so much knowledge and history to it. We can't turn him down. Like I support him 100%. And this North versus South stuff. Come on, Councillor Bondi, that was over 20 years ago. It doesn't matter if we're allocating parkland, maybe, but not for who sits on committees. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Any further nominations? I think for Councillor Bondi to be an official nominee, somebody would have to, I think she nominated herself, but then somebody else, no?
No.
Any further? Okay.
I said I wouldn't.
Okay. Any further nominations? Councillor Bowman, are you willing to accept?
Yes, I will.
Okay. It doesn't look like we have any other nominations, so all in favor of having Councillor Bowman be the new rep? Looks unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Bowman, for stepping forward. And now I'm going to pass this back to our Mayor Snively.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, Deputy Mayor Meloche.
Yes.
For the minutes, if we could have a formal resolution receiving and adopting those police service board minutes and just confirming the appointment.
Okay. So we have, which, does it matter which one we do first?
It could be as one motion.
As one motion. So can I get a motion that receives these minutes and Councillor Verbeek receives the minutes of this meeting of May the 7th and acknowledgement of Councillor Bowman being the new representative and passing word along to the Police Services Board. And seconded by Councillor Bjorkman. Councillor Bjorkman, do you have a question? No? Okay. So seconded by Councillor Bjorkman. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Hands, please. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And now I will pass it to back to Mayor Snively.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, item 15 on the agenda, 15.1.1 is a notice of motion that was first presented at the May 4th regular council meeting and is now being brought forward for council's consideration this evening. As moved by Councillor Bondi, that council bring forward the item listed as shoreline protection of public property from the mayor's list of roundtable items in order to discuss and give direction to administration as it relates to potential liability, budget considerations, shoreline protection of public property policy, timelines, and fallen trees policy during this time of historic high water levels, as moved by Councillor Bondi and would require a second.
Can't see anybody. Sorry. Okay, I need a seconder. Okay, Deputy Mayor Meloche. Go ahead, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just one of the topics, and I don't even know what you were going to speak to, but I wanted to bring it up for discussion. When we had our roundtable discussion, this was one of the items that you listed, and it's caught my eye and it's continued to catch my eye. So I was hoping maybe we could have a discussion and see if council has any appetite to look at public property shoreline protection. Again, it's listed in our strategic plan as identifying, protecting. There has been residents in the Colchester Country Club area that have reached out to me, and again, at the end of Arner, saying, you know, is the town going to look at public property? Are we liable for anything on public property? And are we eventually going to do anything with budget? So just raising it to council because it's been brought to my attention. That's all.
I'm gonna let Chris, our CEO, talk on this issue. Go ahead.
Sure. Through your worship, yeah, it's something that I've had discussions with various councillors on. I think that's something that if council was looking for movement on this, or I guess movement towards an end goal of having a plan for shoreline, it would come in the 2021 budget. So if you know, the motion was made tonight to create almost like an inventory and a risk assessment plan of all our shoreline properties, because there are more than just one, with varying degrees of severity of repair, right? You have the $40,000 fix and you might have a $200,000 fix, whether depending if it's on the bluff. So if it's something that that council wanted to pursue in 2021, we could bring it forward as a budgetary item and look at you know, getting an engineer in, doing an entire review of all the town-owned property, risk assessment, estimated costs, and maybe a priority listing. And then kind of like a roads needs study, council would have a shoreline needs study of all our property, and they could determine the impacts to future budgets and forecasting from that. So that's, I guess, where I would recommend council head if it's something they wanted to entertain.
Just a question, Chris. How many properties are we talking here? Do we know? Do we know off the top?
I did several weeks ago. I don't off now, but I know it's Doug might know. I think it's between 20 and 30, maybe more.
Doug, do you know how many there is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the last map that our GIS did, it was 18 properties, and that was 4 years ago. So I'm not sure if that's expanded or not.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any questions from council on this notice of motion? Nothing?
No, Councilor Bjorkman.
Councilor Bjorkman. Sorry about that, Councilor.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we've been called for different people with regard to our property that abuts their property where they're having issues. And again, it goes to severity. How do we determine what are we going to work on? The idea, how many properties are there? What's the cost per property to do any mitigation? What's our legal exposure, which is Councillor Bondi's point. But we do have a couple of properties right now. And with these easterly winds that we've been having the last couple of days, I mean, the marina, the marina, the entire sidewalk is underwater. There's no freeboard at all at the ramp. The ramp is all the way up into the parking lot. That's where the water is right now. So when we have these easterly blows, the people that are having problems on their shoreline are really having problems. And there are a couple that are next door to a couple of our properties where we should at least look at it and see, is there something we should be doing? I was speaking, Councillor Bondi sent me a couple of notes. I was speaking with Councillor Vanderdolen with regard to this. There are things that we need to do and our residents need to do. An example is at Bell Park here in Colchester. When you go down to the town-owned property of Bell Park, on either side where the private properties are, they have break walls that actually come around the point and back up into Bell Park. So they're not counting on the town of Essex to be doing shoreline work because they're protecting both sides of the park because that's their property. That's what they're looking at. The property down on Dehinda that has the large rock wall that goes onto town property. the town is responsible to some extent for what's going on at the mouth there, but the property owner is taking care of that entire corner because that's their property. So I think we need to come up with a policy. We need to really look at how can we best assist our property owners that abut our property. What is our responsibility? What's their responsibility? We need to go after this a little more intently. And I understand the idea of keeping it up till budget time, but I do believe there's a couple properties right now that we should be looking at to see if we're impinging on their property, and if we're going to, is there at least something we should be telling them that they need to do to protect their property? So, you know, I'd be happy to give that information to admin of the ones I know about, and to at least get a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vandendal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I support a discussion and an investigation and a look into this. Over the last few weeks, I've been helping some shoreline property owners access our new loan program, which they're grateful for. But I agree with Councillor Bjorkman that it's incumbent upon us to be good property owners to ourselves. It's not good enough that we can escape our own rules because we're the government. We should be looking after property, especially when it impinges on others, like that gap tooth situation that Councillor Bjorkman was referring to, where our property is the missing tooth on the wall. I mean, that's unacceptable. We shouldn't be allowed to do that, and we shouldn't. And I wouldn't mind a tour, or at least a photographic tour, of the 18 access points that Mr. Sweet says we have, and so that we can compare them visually ourselves, in addition to hearing an engineering opinion and a cost estimate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, through your worship, I think as Councillor Vanderdolen noted, I mean, there is a difference between you know, being a good partner or a good neighbor, which is something we can do, or Councillor Bjorkman noted, in terms of we have provided responses to anybody that has contacted us with adjacent properties to town-owned properties, and I think many councillors that have been on in their seats for any length of time have heard me give that response to council as well. Is that historically and I guess precedent-wise, the town has never initiated protection of their property. The answer has always been to the residents that if you wish to protect your property, that's great. And I know the one thing you noted, Councillor Vanderdolen, is that we're doing something different than a resident would have to do. So a resident doesn't have to do that either, regardless of what's happening to their neighbors as a result of their property. So we're acting as that resident. Are we being a good neighbor? That's you know, that's something to be discussed differently. But I think from last I saw, I know Doug had noted 18. I think we're more into the mid-20s in terms of properties that are identified as potential lakefront properties. So the issue then really becomes is, you know, similar to the beach roads, does it become a political will of which ones we're doing first, or do we need to wait to do a full assessment of all the properties and have the engineering done so that it's a very objective look at which properties we're determining? And that's, I guess, our struggle in terms of, you know, are we going to deal with whoever gets to council first, or are we going to deal with them all and then look at, you know, an engineering solution for costs, priorities, risk assessment? And that's I guess that's the struggle we're having here.
Okay. Councillor Bondi, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May 4th or so, about a year ago, there's an email I just sent. I just found it. It's called Access Candidates Full Extent, but it's all of our properties and that you sent us, Mr. Nepsy, and I think there's 18. And so ones that you know, the one on the east where Arner is, that's half owned with Kingsville. Maybe we could reach out to Kingsville and see if they were going to do their share. If they're going to do their share, that's one that is kind of like the easier ones to do. We are at historic high levels of water in our lake, and it is about being a good neighbor, and it is about, you know, I believe liability. So I don't know. I don't want to wait another year and a half to start looking at these, because either we're going to do something or we're going to do nothing. And if we're going to do something, can we look at the ones on the shared border and in the ones that the public property is doing damage to the neighbors substantially? I think we could look at a few of them sooner rather than later. And even if we can't do anything right now, we got to look at trees. Are we taking down trees? That's another thing. I know when a dock rolled up on one of our public beaches, we took it off, but are we taking down trees? Can we do anything to help the homeowners? That's all.
Anybody else? Thank you.
So what's the direction?
A motion, but there's no direction. Okay, I had a motion here.
Motion has no direction.
Yeah. I had a motion, but there was no direction on that motion, so
It was a discussion.
just discussion. Is there a motion? You want, you brought this forward, Councillor Bondi. Do you want to make a motion that? If before you make the motion, if I can just say one thing on these properties, I'm just going to use one property, for example, Colchester Country Club. Okay, that is owned, if I believe, a real small portion of that property is owned by the town. It's accessed from that creek coming out, if I have the clear understanding on that. The other ones, the other pieces, I think the one piece is owned by Zuliani and the other piece is owned by Patty Gillen. So that runs into problems. So if we do the repair, okay, protection on our end, which is a very, very, very small piece of that. I mean, you're only talking maybe 15 feet, but you have probably 80 feet from there on. And I know it's only wrote it, that tree left, and that's probably the tree we pulled out of the lake. But I don't know how we accomplish on repairing every single one of them. They're all different. Every one of them is different. So go ahead.
Through your worship, it goes back to, I guess, what I noted. My real issue is, I know Councilor Bondi, you noted, well, we'll do the ones that are the worst. Well, who defines that, right? And that's my issue, is I don't want to be the one calling the shots on, well, I think yours is worse than yours, and then creating that pecking order without a true understanding and an objective study of a rationale behind what's worse, what's not, and why is it that. And also, there's a big financial impact to this. And I know, money costs, everything costs, right? And when you're talking 40, 50, 60,000, a third of a percent, 1%, whatnot, when we're giving, trying to find monies for things like John R. Parr Homestead and monies for other things, there's a definite financial impact to it. And that's why I think it's important to have a full-on risk assessment of these properties with the cost associated with them. So council has their eyes completely open in terms of what this program may cost, and they can determine how far they want to go or not go with this program, as opposed to just venturing out, hey, let's fix this property or let's fix that property. So that's kind of my, my issues and concerns with just going off and fixing the properties that you've heard about today.
If I may add to that, I know one property owner on Marston Beach, just to do, I think it was 60, not even 60 feet of frontage, 50 feet of frontage, was $75,000 just for stone. So I understand, and we should be doing something on our properties. I agree with that, but I think as a council, and I think administrative staff, we should look at each of them, see which ones are really the ones that are in need right now to be repaired, and then go from there. So
through you, Mr. Mayor, right now the motion on the floor was to bring forward this item, discuss this item, and then give direction to administration.
Yeah, The motion, yeah, is, you want to, Councillor Bondi's the one that brought it forward. You want to give direction, please? Go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. I do have one further question. Residents would like to know if they could dump cement there. Not in all of them, but can they dump like clean fill there? That's a whole other thing. If the town property is eroding their property, people are at a loss on how to fix it, right? So that's probably a whole other IRCA can of worms. But anyways, I think that the direction from what I'm hearing from administration is that we ask for this report and then discuss in our 2020 budget, 2021 budget.
Right. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, through your worship, what we can do is we can look to generate the RFP, and then, but if we want to do the RFP, get prices back or estimates on prices, and then look to if there's capital infrastructure monies, if things come in under budget, if they do in a like for like situation where we're pulling from the same pool of monies of taxpayer dollars, there's a potential then we can maybe offset that and try and get that done this year. So I guess step one though would be, to venture down getting that RFP done and getting estimates on what an actual study and a risk assessment and an inventory would cost.
Well, if I could just add, hopefully there's some monies coming down from senior levels of government. This was brought up at AMO on shoreline protection, and that's a hot subject, not just in this area. Lake St. Clair, all the Great Lakes are up. So, and I know we've been pushing. I don't know how hard we could, how much harder we can push. We push, but nothing's happening right now. But I agree with what you're saying, Councillor. We should be doing something with some of these properties. Some of these properties are bad. Anybody else? Okay, so that was your direction, Councillor Bondi?
Councillor Vanderbilt.
Councillor Vanderbilt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we spend like $100,000 on an engineering deep dive, can't we just get like photographs of the 18 to 25 spots and just have a look at them and talk about it?
Yeah, sure. That's what we will be doing for sure. We'll be looking at each of the properties first, Councillor, before we spend any money. It's got to come in front of council first before we spend taxpayers' money. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so through your worship, from what I'm hearing from council is let's do the assessment of the inventory, because the last several weeks I've pushed our GIS to provide updated maps, and although there are some properties in addition to the 18 that are potential question marks, and there may be some legal involved in terms of doing title searches to see if they're actually our properties or our right of way. So there's some in addition to the 18. So I think we are closer to that 25 range, but we can come back with a report. I'll work with Kevin to look at that, Kevin and Rob to look at that. So a report on the inventory with photographs, and we'll start that, and then that'll garner a better discussion from council.
Maybe that's the first step.
Yeah, as a step one.
That'd be step one. Any other questions? Everything's good?
Yeah, I don't need direction from that.
No.
I'll take this as direction to get that report and bring it back.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Item 16, or I'm sorry, item, sorry.
Yeah, you have another notice.
Yeah. As added to the agenda tonight as 15.1.2 is the first of two notices of motion from Councillor Verbeek. Councillor Verbeek, can you please present your first notice of motion, and this would come back for council's consideration at the June 1st meeting.
Yes, and thank you. Okay, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas earlier tonight we passed motions to reach out to the province on behalf of our businesses, and whereas we need to examine ways to assist our businesses, whether it's tax breaks or incentives or temporary changes to our bylaws or closing Main Street for a couple of days a week. My motion is that council and administration look at ways to assist our businesses to do sidewalk or outdoor operations in light of the limitations during the pandemic. And I'll ask for a seconder.
So through you, Mr. Chair, this is just for present this evening, Councillor Verbeek.
Okay.
It'll come back for seconding at the June 1st meeting.
Okay, and I hope everybody will bring lots of ideas to this discussion in 2 weeks. Let's get outside the box and see how we can help our businesses.
Thank you.
Can I read my motion?
Sure. Go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Chair, is this your second notice of motion, Councillor Verbeek?
Yes, it is, Mr. Auger.
Okay,
go ahead.
Just that we look at some new ways to improve our recycling efforts in this municipality. Another topic for conversation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as added to the adopted agenda earlier this evening as 15.1.4 is a notice of motion from Councillor Bondi. Once again, this is for presentment only with Council's consideration of this motion at the June 1st meeting. Councillor Bondi, can you please present your notice of motion?
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That council request a geese mitigation report from administration for Colchester Beach, including the use of a walking dog to scare geese to improve beach experience, water quality, and student workload. And that's if we still have a beach.
Item 16 under the agenda, Mr. Mayor, is reports and announcements from the council members.
Councillor Van den Dolen, you have anything?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's not about something our council did directly, but it's something we enabled. Our first act as a new council, or one of the first acts, was we agreed to spend $1.5 million finishing the bike path along County Road 50. And we did so because Kingsville promised that they would finish their hookup if we did so. And just last week, they finished paving the bike lanes on the Kingsville side of the Undertown line at County Road 50. So you can now ride a bicycle from Leamington well past Colchester community. So I think that's a great thing, and I can hardly wait to get out there and try it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Verbeek, do you have anything?
Okay. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, we spoke quite a bit about the food hub this weekend that we participated in, bringing groceries to the community. They made up beautiful baskets, but Maxine, one of the director at the UHC, asked that I share this phone number for food assistance helpline, and you just dial this number, no questions asked, and they will bring groceries to your door if you find yourself in need. And it's 1-888-488-1578. And that's the food assistance helpline for anybody, no questions asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Guerin, you have anything?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Councillor Bjorkman. You're good? Councillor Bowman?
Nothing for me tonight.
Deputy Mayor Malash?
I have nothing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bondi? Nothing? I have nothing. Okay, thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, moving on to bylaws this evening. 17.1.1 is bylaw 1911 for third reading, and that's the confirming bylaw from the May 4th meeting.
Need a mover, please? Mover for that bylaw? Councillor Bowman and Councillor Verbeek, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Bylaw 1912 for three readings this evening. This is a bylaw to amend 1037, the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the town of Essex. And this is further to Council Resolution R203066, in which Council authorized the submission of a rezoning bylaw for approval by Council to permit multiple unit dwellings within the lands identified as the Gianni Estates subdivision.
Mover, please, Counselor Van Dolen and Counselor Garen. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
And bylaw 1914, being a bylaw to authorize an agreement between Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario and the town of Essex. And this is in relation to the Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement for the Municipal Modernization Program.
Deputy Mayor Malage and Councillor Bjartman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
And bylaw 1916 for 2 readings this evening is the confirming bylaw for this May 19th regular council meeting.
Mover, please. Deputy Mayor Malage and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, council. It was a long night. We got a lot done tonight. Thank you very much. Bye. Bye, Councillor.